Hello, Dream Team, and another very warm welcome to this week's episode of The Good, the Bad and the Rugby in partnership with City Index, the leading provider of spread betting, CFD and FX trading. It is good to have you with us once again. Not many to go as the season begins to head towards its finale. You're back from your cycling.
Yeah, that was hell.
How's your arse?
That was hell. You both got phone calls off me whilst I was going up a hill for 3 hours.
Heavier breathing
Multiple
than normal.
times. Yeah, it was more panting and pain.
I thought it was one of those nuisance callers. I was like, no, stop calling me, whoever this is. No, I won't send you my pants.
I unsubscribed from this channel.
Yeah, exactly. Mum, that you go.
No, it was amazing, but it was hard. I mean, I managed to duck out the last 2 days because of the wedding, but 500. I did 505 kilometres, 13,000 metres of climbing. We climbed the highest road in Europe, which seemed to take half a day. No, wait, it did take half a day. But then what you don't get to then appreciate as a larger gentleman that takes a long time to go up a hill is then you get the benefits going downhill, but you don't really enjoy any of that because you're holding on. It's like going around in an F1 car where you're trying to make hairpin bends, but it's the most enjoyable bit. One of our team, Callum, did come off though about 30, which he'd been sick the night before, so he hadn't cycled the day before. Because he'd like had a stomach thing, so he was excited to be back on the bike. Genuine cyclist, little whippersnapper, 71 kilos, has his own cycle shop in London, and came off, and then he was stepped down for the rest of the week. So he had a bit of a nightmare, but a lot of hard work, and but I think we're going to raise a good chunk of change for Parkinson's, and I lost like 4 kilos, which
I was sitting down. So when people were like, "Where's?" We were doing something. Where did we go? Clay Pigeon Shoot Day. And obviously, no, the Tinds wasn't around. So I was saying, guess what? And I was so excited to tell us, you know what Tinds is doing? I said, he's fucking cycling up a mountain. And they're like, no, it can't be. And on his Instagram, he's written the page. I literally on Instagram went through it and I was like, right, first day 1, 122 kilometres, 3,333 metres elevation, 8 hours. I was like, that right. So I was telling them, and they're like, wow, that sounds awful. That must be the whole thing. I went, no. Fucking day 2, right? 98 kilometres, 2,842 metres elevation, 6 hours and 49 minutes. And I went on. And the last day he posted 142 kilometres, 9 hours on the bike. I was like, that was so rank. And let's be honest, you were pretty unprepared for it, weren't you?
Yeah, I didn't do the training that was necessary. I'm not entirely sure the training would have, well, obviously it would have done, but it wouldn't have helped me that much more. Going up a hill is just hard work. Going down a hill is quite easy work. But yeah, it was, had some, as someone once said, I had some chats with my ancestors on a few hills. And,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It inspired you?
Yeah.
Well done. We've set you the challenge this week of bringing in a legend, which you've managed to not only achieve, but also exceed. Not Hask. Would you like to introduce this week's guest, please?
Yes, it would give me my great honour to introduce one of the greatest rugby players that I've ever had the fortune to play against. He's been one of the greatest players off the field to me, and we've formed a friendship that's lasted for a long time. We've been getting together on our yearly trips down to Sydney, a bit of golf, a bit of everything. He's just one of the great oaks out there, as a Safa would say, and it gives me my great. And plus, he might have had 140 caps for Australia and been a bit of a legend on the pitch. It's my best mate, George Gregan.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
That's quite emotional.
That's a very beautiful introduction there, Tins. 100%, mate. We go way back. I think obviously played a lot against each other on the field, but we made sure we maintain a good, healthy, and just strong friendship off the field, and that's just grown and prospered. And yeah, we've gone through quite a bit together, but it's been amazing. It's been amazing. Good to be on the show, chatting to you.
You must be great on the piss if you're friends with Mike Timber. Do you know what I mean? Because he bonds with people, but if you must be like gone through a lot. It must mean you've survived until an early hours a few times.
Yeah, well, it's been a bit of that. There's smoke bombs involved as well. You've got to place them the right certain pockets. But let's not discount Zara as well.
Wow.
Like you put them together. Like seriously, you need a pocket full of those smoke bombs.
I've got to go to the toilet. It's only 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll see you later.
It did. It really kicked on another level. Was in Bali, probably, really, wasn't it? So we bumped into Griegs, and Berkey was out there as well with you, wasn't he? And it sort of kicked on from there, and then with us going down to Australia most Januaries, apart from COVID, we've always caught up and we've had some good dinners out, and we always keep it rolling. We know a lot of similar people as well in Sydney. So
what you like on the pitch? Because obviously Tinds that's pretty much level 1 Tinds to level 3 Tinds is pretty much the same. Level 4 Tinds will fall asleep in the toilet. Level 1 and 2 Zara are unbelievable. Level 3 Zara is like unplayable. You need to evacuate level 4. Call in the army. What's George Gregan like? Level 1 to 2. Is there like a level 4? Lock up your daughters, put a bulletproof vest on, and run away.
Level 4 is my smoke bomb. That's when I kind of. It's funny. You go into your sort of primal instincts, and mine would be just to get. I've got to get out of here and survive. Like I am done. I'm not the sort of person who goes falling asleep in a lounge. I don't do that. I kind of know when that's on my way. But I was sort of. It's funny. I'm not huge, but I've got. I'll sneak up. I'll pick my moments.
Really?
Like Japan was one of those ones where you're waking up. Like during Rugby World Cup, it was funny. There's a real theme with Rugby World Cup.
Picked me off the street in Japan. Tinds, mate. Do you want to go get some breakfast?
That was interesting because it was
black crows. Saw the black crows. That's always a sign in Japan. It's like, okay, might be time to get to bed.
Because you lads, I mean, obviously I wasn't part of any sort of World Cup winning side or any sort of amazing thing, but there was a lot of kind of old boys doing some pretty record levels of consistent nights out. Like I reckon Justin Marshall may or may not still be on the pitch now. I remember the only reason he had to...
He probably is, but just maybe somewhere else in the world.
The only reason he had to call play, like at Wimbledon, to put the covers on, was he got a glandular fever halfway through, and that's the only way he missed a couple of hours of drinking because he had to go to hospital and then come back out again.
He came back out. He has a theory, I think, Marshy, that you can smoke it out, you can drown it, but either way, you push on. Something about him.
Was it good those World Cup with you boys all get together and sort of meet up?
Yeah, really special. I think, particularly harping back to Japan, I think it was the first time. I think Hoppers did it with the Rugby Players Association. So everyone got together. A place called Two Rooms in Tokyo, like in
the clubhouse.
Yeah, we had our clubhouse, which was like our local rugby club, which was great. Everyone was turning up there. The word got around. Everyone was turning up. But this was put together for all the international players retired to get together, have an event. I had it before the post-semi-final and before the final. I thought, I wonder what that's going to be like. Remember with Kafe, we say, we'll say yes. If it's no good the first week, then we'll brush the next week. Everyone turned up the first week. We had such a great time.
Yeah, it was good.
And it was a celebration of rugby. I know... We watch a bit of Vikings. I'm a bit of a Vikings fan. I think that's kind of like rugby's Valhalla. And we all had a great night. And we said, we're doing this next week. There's Drico, there's Thierry Dusatois, like there's like Tinds. Everyone was there. Marshy. Like it was great fun. And everyone was just like rubbing their hands together saying, is this the beginning of like something special? Let's bring on France 2023.
Yeah. Are you already making plans for France 2023?
I think we are. Yeah, it's well and truly. It's not too far away, isn't it? Like it's exciting.
It's around the corner.
Yeah. That cycle comes around quickly.
It does. It's running a Lions tour in 3 years' time as well.
Yeah, it's true.
All around to,
it's all happening.
Around the other end. It's very, very nice to have you on the pod. And there are so many things to talk to you about. But to break it down, I'd love to chat to you, obviously, about one of the great careers. Love to get your views on Eddie Jones. And then, did you watch much of the rugby at the weekend?
I watched the rugby, yeah. I was actually in a pub locally just to see that. Sunday morning brunch, very civilised, wasn't it?
Nice
touch.
Not too bad, nice touch. Let's start with you first of all, though, because there are rugby players who play and wear the battle scars, and then there are those who play 1,000 times and look like you've just been for a quiet jog, etc. How are you? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, actually. Feeling really well in terms of like enjoying watching the rugby. Well, I know we'll get around to talking to it, but I'm enjoying not playing it, especially when I've. Over the years, I've done some commentary and you get close to the sideline and you see what's going on. Not as though we were playing touch football when we play, but it's the next level now. And, everyone's going hard at the ball. It's just not 6, 7, 8 and maybe a couple of the tight forwards, but everyone, it's really impressive. Yeah. So I'm happily retired watching and observing. And, outside of like rugby, life's pretty good, and I don't have any major injuries so far, touch wood. And I don't play any social games of rugby. I think I tried to do that in 2011, played with Marshall. We played the Hong Kong Tens. We said, let's play together. Wouldn't that be great? And we've put a team together, and some of us were still playing or just finished. I just finished in Japan. So I was still in rugby condition. You had Tusi Pisi, you had Rarini IE, then Marshy came on. We had a few others. We had Harley T-Pole. We had a good team. And then everyone sees our team and everyone's lit up and it's like their chance to actually take shots. So we're thinking, this is going to be a bit of fun. Let's just play. Marshy, you play 10, I'll play 9. We'll mix it around. We're just getting smashed off the ball 3 seconds. We're used to getting hit late, but like, come on. We're saying to the guys, come on. We're on an artificial pitch. We're in the middle of freaking Hong Kong 2 days before the 7th. We're not at Twitters.
Marshy's got the turning circle of an oil tanker.
But that's lose-lose, isn't it? Because you're dehydrated, because you're on the smash.
Yes.
It's hot, and then some loose bloke's going to fall on your leg, and it's just lose-lose. Like I see it all the time. You see these lads, we're going on these like Dubai 10s or the World 10s, and then some guy's back on a knee brace, and you're like, just don't do it. You've done all you can do.
Ribs gone.
Yeah. Especially I saw Paul Tupai. Paul Tupai played, obviously Northampton legend, played all over the place. He was hitting people and fold him out like a travel map. And this thing, honestly, this guy's ribs went through the other side of his body. And you're like, why would you ever do that? And you know, half of them are in shape, half of them are out of shape. It's horrific.
And that sound, like when you've copped a good shot, you don't want to be hearing that. Like, it never goes away.
You used to be able to hold those sounds in. You can't.
You know you're making that same noise getting off the floor as well without anyone touching you.
And a quite glorious career. I mean, there are so many things to talk about and teams that you're involved in that really will forever stand the test of time. When you look back now with a cigar and a glass or whatever it is that you drink, what do you make of all that you achieved in the game?
Yeah, it's funny. I think when you're in the moment, you actually don't. You're so busy with the here and now, and then potentially what's the next campaign? Be it Super Rugby, for us it was obviously internationals as well, and you don't get a chance to reflect because you're busy moving forward. But no, once you're long time retired and you've hung them up, you get a chance to look back and then spend time with the people who you played with. And you look back, had a bloody amazing team.
Yeah.
Like I came into the Wallaby team when I was 21 in 94, and I'm playing with the likes of Noddy. Noddy's in Australia. Like Noddy was my 10, so I'm passing to my hero I've been watching on TV since he played 84 Grand Slam, and then I'm passing to him and he's expecting me to make certain calls, and that's the level of relationship a 9-10 has. And you think, okay, I had Tim Gavin as my number 8, I had David Campese on the wing, you had Jason Little, Tim Horan, all just incredible players, and that's how I started. And they were a team which won everything too. They beat South Africa in South Africa, they'd won a World Cup, they'd beaten South Africa in Australia, having lost the first test and coming back. So they just were a pretty special team.
Yeah.
And then so I was lucky to start with that because that was just the culture, that was the team, and that's their level of preparation, expectation. They had a level also to step up against. I remember going to my first All Blacks test, and I can remember just the intensity of that week. And the shorter weeks back in that because it was still amateur, sort of semi-amateur then. And you'd arrive on the Wednesday and just the level of intensity went up because you're playing the All Blacks and you just picked up and they just went to another level, these players. So lots of learnings.
Was that the game, the Jeff Wilson tackle?
That's where I made one tackle. I was still living off that one tackle.
It's a hell of a tackle.
That's the one tackle. Yeah, that's
How
it.
often do people remind you of that?
I get reminded quite a lot of that tackle. Yeah.
It's well worth YouTubing. But I mean, because for all that you achieved in the game, that was the moment almost that launched you, wasn't it?
It was the 4th test match. It was the first test match against the All Blacks. We'd actually started really, really well, a bit like England started really well on the weekend, and then the All Blacks reeled us in, and it came down to the last few minutes. We actually probably shouldn't have won that game in the end because they were just kept coming. And it was an example of what the All Blacks do. Like you had Zinzan Brooks, you had Shawnee Fitzpatrick, you had a young Jeff Wilson, Frank Bunce. Like they had a pretty amazing team too. So that was your introduction. You got an understanding they're never going to go away. So you have your first taste of that, and you have a victory, which was pretty amazing. But as I said, I inherited a team which I came into a team which just had that mentality. They could find a way to win, which was really impressive. And then before you know it, you're playing in a World Cup. So I had my first loss as a Wallaby the following year, which was the first test match. It was the opening game of the Rugby World Cup. But up until that point, you just did what you had to do, and it seemed to be pretty successful with that group of players. So I was pretty lucky.
What was what was that group like? You talk about the greats that were in that sort of that first team that you went into. Was there still a lot of social? Was it one of those? I remember going into the team that I walked into in 2000. You walk in, and there's a lot demanded of you, but then there's a lot of fun that is had off the field. And Were there any complete hard-nosed characters that you couldn't crack who just didn't really...
Did everyone speak to you on day one?
Yeah, well, they actually were pretty good. Like, particularly, Campo sort of was in his own world. Campo's sort of always been pretty consistent in that regard.
Was he more welcoming, or was he? You had to earn your way.
He was kind of welcoming. I'd met him actually earlier in the year playing sevens, so I'd
he probably told you how to do things better.
Yeah, totally. Ricky Stewart had told me. Ricky Stewart, who played with him in ACT, he's a rugby league coach and everything. But hard-nosed guy. We're all from around the same area. He said, George, like, I'll tell you, if you room with Campo, tell him to go and get his fucking fruit salad in the morning. You're not his slave. Like, and he says, and stand up to him. He says, seriously, he'll respect you for that. So there was a bit of that.
Really?
On. Yeah. He was like, go get my fruit salad. I said, mate, you can get your fruit salad. But if you want to join me, come down. I said, I'm not bringing your fruit salad up. And he said, and there was a little bit of that
Really?
one. Initially, that was the first one where I think we roomed in
But
Coogee
how
for
do
the
you
sevens.
how do you take that as kind of is that your natural personality, or would you have done that already, or would you be yes sir, no sir, three bags
I
full sir?
would have been a little bit, well, okay, but like, are you going to reciprocate? Like, for me, I know I'm younger, but like, are you going to reciprocate at some point, Campo? I would have probably done that, but not to the stage where I got the green light from Ricky Stewart because he knew him and he played with him, and he said and he would. And Ricky, and to be fair, Campo was a pretty good sport in that regard, but he's the kind of guy, we've all heard the stories, but I roomed with him. He's the kind of guy who, if he couldn't sleep, he'd wake up, turn the TV on in the middle of the night and scratch and be walking around and going, I know you can't sleep, but does that mean I can't sleep? That sort of mentality. But
It's Campo's world, and we're all just living in it.
Yeah, it was his world. But he what I did learn from him, like, he trained, like, one thing, there's all these stories, he was super professional, worked so hard on all aspects of his game, particularly his kicking, passing. Like, he'd back himself under pressure in terms of being able to deliver, and he could dominate games. And he could see things, which I guess makes those special plays. And I played with a number of special players. Steve Larkham comes to mind. They see the game, they see it a few frames forward, and he certainly was that kind of a player and very dominant when he needed to be.
I wonder with sort of a young 21-year-old scrum half coming into the mix. Backs are one thing, David Campese is one thing, but gnarly forwards. Going, listen, because you have to order them around, don't you? You have to be dominant. And I'm not sure how did they take that?
Well, I remember Kernsey giving me Phil Kearns was my captain at the time. Not he, then he injured his quad. We played Italy. I think he injured his quad in the first test, and then so Kernsey took over. So he was my captain up until 95 World Cup. So for the remaining 4 test matches, we're doing a training session down in Melbourne. And he pulled me aside and gave me a bit of a bollocking, which was good because I wasn't talking to him and ordering around the field. He says, you're a number 9, you need to order us around the field. I said, right, Kernsey, you want that? Okay. Then I started barking orders at him, get off the deck, get on the blind side, Kernsey, make your tackles. I'm not making that tackle, get right shoulder. And he loved it. He says, that's what we needed. So I can give you more of that chat. More of that chat.
All day, baby. All day.
Never stop. But it was good. Like, that's your job. So it was really, it sounds really, it's not nothing new, but it's like, just do your job. What's your job? My role is to communicate to them, extra set of eyes, like where we want them, long placement, like Bob Bly used to say, green set it, got to hold onto the ball, wait for the green socks to go over, then a long placement, all that kind of stuff. So if you weren't getting it, you give them a bollocking, all that kind of stuff. It was really, really important. So, and also from, like, Michael Lyons is another good example. I'd call the back rows with Tim Gavin, and then he'd call the next plays. So when it came to scrum time, it was my job to call the back row. So if I went to Notty and said, well, what are we doing? He'd say, well, what's the back row play? Like, not when you're coming off the line, but that was kind of it. So you learnt really quickly to take responsibility, which I did encourage. And if you didn't, you got to rock it. And you'd also get, like, in saying that, you'd also get great positive reinforcement from the guys. When you did something really, which they loved and they really appreciated and respected, they'd be one patch on the back because that's what was required. But no, it was a team which, as I said, they'd been everywhere. They'd won everywhere, so they knew it was required. And we always spoke about switching on and switching off. So coming back to your point, they knew how to switch off. We knew how to switch off and have a good time. But then when it was time to lock in, it was time to lock in. I remember a story on that switching on, switching off. It goes back. And Glenn Eller was the backs coach for the Wallabies in 95, through sort of many years, even getting in 2001 with Eddie and with the Brumbies. But he taught me, we played Hong Kong Sevens. That was back in the day. So you go to Hong Kong, you get on the smash, you go to, I think it was Stanley Markets, and you choose your crab, whatever it is, and we're all eating this meal. And then I was the youngest on tour, and they're just stitching me up on everything, rickshaw rides, like, you got to tip this. And so they're just having a laugh with me. And I'm drinking Long Island iced teas with Jason Little.
What a dangerous choice to drink as well.
And Jason Little is like he's put me to the sword. But I'm rooming with Ili Tabu, who I never saw all week. Ili was with the Fijian boys having kava ceremonies. I never saw Ili. He's got glass in his elbow, turning up, and he's heavy. Like I'm saying, Ili, what do you? So I was getting him fruit. So Ili deserved fruit. Like, and I have to find him, and I need to give him some fruit. So
Give him some fruit. He needs a hospital. What's George Gregan brought? Bowl of fruit.
We'll get him back on electrolytes.
So we turned up, and there was a tradition. Brendan Moon was the coach for Papua New Guinea, for the Puck-Pucks. And we'd always have this tradition before the sevens started. We'd play like a scrimmage. I'd play against them, so we got to like see how we're going. So we've turned up after this Stanley Market. Like you got your Jason Littles, Tim Horans, Dave Wilson's an amazing team. Campo was part of it. Campo wasn't too engaged in the Stanley Markets. He smoke bombed and had an early night. Very professional. The rest of us are out. We're turning up the next day. Dusty. We're doing a warm-up, and I'm throwing the passes off the deck to everyone. I've thrown it to Ili, and Ili's going, George, stop throwing 3 balls. I said, Ili, just catch the middle one. Just catch the middle one. Just catch that middle one. And so we proceed to get thumped by about 30 points by the Puck-Pucks the day before we start our tournament. And Glenn Eller gives us a bit of a ribbing. He says, you boys, you were on the piss last night. Which kind of, he says, and if you can't get on the piss and back up, then you shouldn't be in this team. So you better rock up tomorrow, sober up, hydrate, do all the things that's needed. And like we've got a bloody good team. We should take it as deep as we can. We got to the final, got beaten by the All Blacks, or the Sevens team, which is Gordon Titchens and a young bloke called Jonah Loman. No one knew, like we all knew about him after that. It was 94, so that's that whole switch on, switch off. So they had the ability to lock in and really get the job done. I'm not sure if that's an ideal preparation in the modern day, but I'll tell you what, that was my grounding on the ability of those guys. So when it was time to lock in, they could really lock in, and they enjoyed themselves.
Long Island iced tea. That takes me back to karaoke in Japan. So does Cave still drink Long Island iced teas?
No, I think he's off that now. I think he's
someone went in the karaoke bar in Japan was making me drink Long Island iced tea.
It's a bad drink.
It is a bad drink. When you look at all the combination of rum, something else, it is horrific.
It's got a lot of ticks in it, doesn't it?
A lot of ticks in it,
It's going to get something.
And mixed down with a sugary Coke that's going to accentuate the hangover next day. Was there any initiations as well? So, like you said, obviously, Campese with the fruit salad, but I imagine were there some sort of traditions? You know, when we make a debut for England, you have to sing on a bus, you have to have a drink with every member of the squad. Was there something loose like that you had to do, or anything you can talk about, or your lawyers told you can't mention it, or as a therapist, only just got it out of your head?
No, we'd have
Georgie was the initiation. Had to hold you horizontally, didn't you, George?
There was a bit of a folklore, but that's my under-21s initiation, where we played against New South Wales. I was under 19s, but I played 21s as well, and that was with the Kafers, and it was like a Jim Swans, and it was like a Marco Computer. So these guys ended up becoming. We got into the Wallaby team, and they're part of the AIS. So I was playing about a year above myself, and against a really good New South Wales team. We played them at the SFS as a curtain raiser. We were staying at the salubrious place called the Bronte Inn, which was like a motel in Bronte. ACT Rugby had a lot of money, but we just got up there. We got a bus trip. We're so pigs in mud. Like, you got to run a Murray's bus. We're going there. How good we're on tour. And so we have our happy hour, as you do, or your kangaroo court. And I'm the youngest, so I'm pouring all the drinks. I'm just copying. I just got used to this. Okay, righto. Like, who's the youngest on tour? Who's first, all that sort of stuff. So all of a sudden, there's quite a large group of drinks in front of me, and then they bring a general business, Your Honour, and all this sort of stuff. It looks like the barman's needs to play catch up. So it's like, and they're putting you on the clock, and it's like, am I going to be able to do my job or not? And so part of, wasn't necessarily initiation, but it was a negotiation. It's a negotiation. So that's probably the differentiator here. And my negotiation was, well, you know what? And they're all like boys being boys. It's a bit like Animals Farm, isn't it? There's a sense of nudity with rugby players at times, isn't there? And so it was, there's a bit of a nude thing. There's a nude skull. They wanted to have that. And then for me to eliminate all these drinks, it was an upside down sort of...
naked, upside down, handstand vibe.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, right. Thank God the camera phones don't exist because you'd still be living that now.
Social media's no good.
You know you'd be living that now.
I'll be dead. We're no good. Like it's like my kids. What do you see?
Daddy, what is that?
You do?
All those good memories. Why are they disappearing to dust?
And you're telling me to be back by 11 p.m. Look at you.
Daddy, you're doing your handstand. I didn't know you could drink by your bottom, Daddy. That's an interesting thing. Let's call it an enema, darling. We'll talk about that later.
So that got me through. That I actually could complete my tasks. They were true to their word.
Really?
Yeah, and there was game on. So that
Well,
was
you're
sort of
better
the fun
drinking
part.
upside down than you are.
Drink. There wasn't a drink. There wasn't the drinking process. Like you were upside down.
Yeah.
There's a bit of dipping type thing going on. So it was kind of
Dipping. I love how you're trying to politically correctly and sort of navigate this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you not see him get the hamburger? It's like, how to explain this story?
Dipping upside down.
This is the good, the bad, and the rugby where legends come to die.
This is it. But you asked the question. I was just being quite honest.
Yeah.
It feels cathartic to
It
share the
is.
story.
It does.
But I could.
been carrying it
It's
for
one of the
a number of
great.
years.
It's one of the
We'll
greatest
get to
legends.
2003 because there's a chance you couldn't have played that team. We will get to that story because we could have lost half our team up in Arnhem Land. But 2003, obviously, we played you boys in the final, and we know what happened with Johnny and you guys getting the job done in extra time. But we went to Darwin because it was look, November's always hot. Like it's hot here at the moment, but it's another level of heat in November when the final was on. And so we said, well, let's go there. Let's get acclimatised. Let's go to the hottest part of Australia. Have you ever seen, it's let me think, Chopper Read. The guy does Chopper Read.
Yeah,
He does the weather.
yeah.
Chopper Read. I'll give you a weather report for the next 1,000 years. It's going to be fucking hot. So people just go up there. We know what it's going to be like. And so we went up there, did like a hard sort of few days in Darwin. Darwin's a great town. And when in doubt, you'll go to the pub and speak to the locals and have a cleansing ale.
Yeah.
And that was kind of part of it. Like Eddie was the coach at the time. Enjoy that. Enjoy Darwin. You're away from it, from all the spotlight and everything. But we're going to work hard. We're going to do this and all that kind of thing. Getting ready. Then we're going to work hard, hit our numbers, and then we're going to go to have a really special experience in Arnhem Land, which Glenn Eller organised. So you can normally just get a permit to go there. It's a pretty special part of the world. It's like the oldest part of Australia. Like it's amazing. And it's a permit of maybe 30 people at a time. So Glenn pulled a few strings with the elders, and we got the whole squad and the management and everything. So we had over 50 of us coming in on these planes. We spent a couple of days there, a bit of barra fishing, learning about like the bush tucker and painting. So just so we're sitting in a cave here, and there's like City Index, and there's a beautiful picture of Hask there on the wall, looking fit with his nice little loafers. And then you're looking back and looking out, and you look back and go, there's City Index and there's Hask. And they go, you see that? That's what you're looking at. It was sunset. And they said from 40,000 years ago, that's how old this painting is. And actually, you just go, wow. You actually feel it. Like you're actually it really is the spiritual part of Australia. So it was really good for the team to get there. Then the local Indigenous tribe did a great ceremony for us and painted and gave us this lovely painting, which was done by a local artist. And it was all about reaching for the stars and like you're going to do the business. So it was a real nice storyline. So we, as a team, we really bonded over that.
Well, I got the feeling it's going to be like something out of Billions. Suddenly he said, no, you have to smoke this. The world nearly imploded.
But prior to that moment, we sort of did all the work. We were relaxing. We've gone barra fishing. We had a few drinks. We cooked the barra, which we'd caught, and we had it's fantastic. And then we had this last sort of session where we're going to go do a little sunset tour and have a look, and then we're going to get on the plane the next morning. And there's just crocs. There's a lot of crocs, and they're not small. They're the biggest crocs I've ever seen. And I've seen big crocs, but the crocs there, you think about it, they've been there for probably about 40,000 years, and they've got a river full of a lot of food, lots of barra, and there was almost like you go on the Côte d'Azur, you go in the French Riviera or the Italian, just where they set up all those little beautiful, lovely booths where people are right on top of each other. It was pretty much like edge to edge, like probably about 50 massive crocs just sunning themselves on this beach. So Max, our guide, says to us, he says, "Hey guys, look, before we go on this like sunset cruise, and just we're going to tell you a little bit that we'll finish where the crocs are, and we're going to dock a little bit further away, but don't do the distress call, because if the mother hears like the like that sound, it's like we're between it and the boat, and it might make them a bit agitated, and it could. So don't be making any noises. And if you hear that noise, stay still. We'll edge out, and we'll just slowly get away, so we're not in between the baby and the mother/father." We said, okay. So you got one boat full of people like Hask, people like Tinds, people like Lottie Takiri, Matt Kiddo, Matt Rogers, like just the ones who said, so you got to go, So we'll get a response. So we get to this moment. There's the friggin' Saint-Tropez version of crocs just sunning themselves and just dead still. They want to get a reaction. So, and we're on these two sort of float boats, and the sensible boat's on the left and theirs is over here. That one's going, and then you see a bit of movement. They've been dead still. 3 of these massive crocs come straight at the boat, and you see this boat tip. Everyone who's on that side of it goes to the other side. And then we're over here, we're seeing it. That's kind of tipping. And we're thinking, no, this isn't going to be good. If they go in the water, we've lost half our team because no one survives with those predators hanging around. And then you see the other, so you're diving over and we're saying, fuck. The other guys are pushing for their lives, and it somehow gets back to neutral, and then it's quiet. There's no more. And Max
Suddenly the idiots don't go.
And then Max, our guide, is just ashen white. And then he goes from being really quiet and just realised he almost lost half a boat full of wallabies. So by giving them instructions he probably shouldn't have, because that's exactly what they did.
Press the button. I'll press the button.
Press the button. And then he said, you guys are the most stupid, this. And we said, Max, we'll take all of that on board. But whatever you do, you know these personalities. You've been around them for just 12 hours. You give them that instruction, what are they going to be doing? So that was our story. We almost didn't get there. They would have had some nice Wagyu beef from BG.
Would have cut the game well shorter. It'd been easy.
But imagine the video footage of like live, we're in the outback here, and there's always that one shell shot bloke who survived. We don't understand what happened, how did it happen? And you're like, because you fucking made the mating call. You know, there's always that thing on the news where there's like kids who had a party and they invite 2 people and 300,000 people turn up and they steal the roof and burn the house, their parents' house down. It'll be like that.
He was Australian as well.
Guys, is one arm just doing. Oh mate, that would
People
be.
driving into Port Douglas, no one's on the beach. They said, that looks like a beautiful beach. Why is it not on the beach? I'll go to the beach because I'll give you a clue. There's stingers and there's crocs, so stay out of the beach.
If the locals aren't on it, don't go on it.
I want to ask you about Brumbies, and I want to ask you about 99 as well. But on 2003, what do you remember? And having won one previously, you know, you've reached the summit. But how do you reflect on 03?
Yeah, well, it was a chance for. Look, we weren't that consistent the year, probably the 18 months leading into, which England were very much so. But we felt on any given day we could beat anyone, and with that group, we were really building towards peaking. Like I think a lot of teams during a World Cup are trying to get to that last stage and then get themselves in a position where they can play in that final. And that's what we wanted to do, give ourselves a chance. We played England the year before, had a great test match at Twickenham, which England got us in the death, but it was like it was an epic game. It was like 33-30. It was a really awesome game. And we felt we pushed them, and they found a way to win, which they did during that period. And we're saying, but let's see if we can get ourselves another crack. Let's work towards it and let's see how we can go. So that was all part of the preparation. The belief within the group was amazing. We had a lot of guys who'd been there and done that before and played in big games from other codes as well. So I use that word big match temperament. There's a lot of that within the group. And it was also, I think, from our perspective, it was a chance to chase history. No one's gone back to back. Like the All Blacks went 2011, 2015, but that's how hard it is. It's not easy to go back to back. And it wasn't an attitude of let's try and defend it. It was actually, we've got to go and win it again. You can't defend it. So that was the mentality within the group. And we'd been smacked by the All Blacks, I think, in the Tri-Nations. We'd gone to South Africa, raging hot favourites. We lost them by a narrow margin. We come home, we get 15-0, I think, and then we get beaten by 50. We didn't score another point, and the All Blacks put on 50. So all of a sudden, it can happen in sport. Then all of a sudden, you're going from the penthouse to the doghouse and you can't play anymore and all this sort of stuff. And we get to the World Cup and we're sort of under the radar, and people aren't, the public opinion is not that high of us going any further, but we felt, hang on, we could go all right. And we played the All Blacks in Auckland just prior, and we lost to them by the narrowest of margins. Like let it go, but Steve Larkham was sort of scored a try, which wasn't awarded, where he pushed it up against the post back in the day when that was against the post, but we pulled it off. And so it was a 2-point ball game, so it was really tight. We said, well, hang on. They put 50 on us about 3 weeks prior. We pushed them at Eden Park. If we play them again, if we have to beat them once this year, let's beat them in the World Cup. So our mentality was that. So we were really looking forward to the semi-final. As much as no one else probably thought we had that in us, we actually felt we had it in us. And you got a chance to be in the big dance. And then you're playing England. It was like, I think during a World Cup, what you've done previously doesn't matter, because it's a 7-week it's almost like a sprint. You're building up through it, but then it's like boom, 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 3 massive weeks, and then it's the last person standing. But their mentality, I knew what their mentality was. They were a winning team, and they found different ways to beat you. They smashed us in Melbourne. In Melbourne. It's like it's probably the best. That was the best performance I played against an English team.
Really?
Like the one at Twickenham the year before was pretty special. They had, I think, they were nearly 20 points back and came back and got us. But the performance in Melbourne was really, really special because you just come off having 13 on the field, beating the All Blacks in Wellington, and you came to Melbourne and just played a different, like an expansive game. Like you drove it over and did a driving maul try. You just showed all aspects of the game. We're going, okay, they're the standard.
The day that Rogers regrets having to go with Josh Lucy because he absolutely snapped him in two. Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah,
that was a really so going into it was kind of that's what you're after. You want to play. You want to give yourself an opportunity to be in the final.
Yeah. Always interested to ask because obviously it happened to England in 2019. Is the fact that they always say, you played your final a week early, and that was something that was sort of pushed at the Australians because you played so well to beat that All Blacks the week before. But it's interesting to ask someone who's been in one of those. It wouldn't have felt like that to you guys, would it?
No, like it was like that was then. Like we put a full stop on that, and you're kind of thinking our base camp was up in Coffs, so we flew back up to Coffs and try to keep the routine. And having been through it for like 4 years prior, different squad, but the number of players, we actually watched the following day New Zealand lose to France, having been 20 points up. So we had all our expectation on playing. And we just knew whoever gets into a final, they're not mugs. Like they've delivered. And if they can replicate some of that the next week, then that's what it's all about. You're going to get as close to, if that was your best performance, which it probably was for us in the World Cup, that semi-final, it's pretty hard to replicate. Like it wasn't 10 out of 10, but it was pretty close to particularly how we started that match. But it's an arm wrestle. It's a final. It comes down to small margins. It's all about getting your noses in front, which we did early, but then you guys showed the championship qualities of coming back and probably could have put us to the sword, drop ball over the line near half-time, then we hang in there. Like, two quality teams, I don't care what it is in sport, it's always going to be a bit of a gunslinger, isn't it? It's always going to be last person standing. And the conditions, not blame, both teams had to play the conditions. It was always going to be an arm wrestle in those conditions. It wasn't going to be beautiful, expansive rugby. It was going to be a tight, tough contest, and that's what we got.
On 03, late, after the whistle... possibly landing back neck. I just wonder what the recollection.
Are you talking about the red card over here?
Red card.
Imagine him now. Imagine the crowd. They would have gone nuts. But it was like, play on. It was play on, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I blame back. As I always say, I blame Backy.
Yeah.
Actually, but I said he always pushed me. I watched it the other day. He didn't push me. But I keep telling George that, mate, it was Backy. Like, bury him. I didn't want to do it.
I know we're going to come on to Eddie Jones later, but just interesting, obviously, he was coaching that, and I think that World Cup, and you said kind of the arm wrestle and the way that England could win. I think they had more variety, but it was based around kind of a strong forward pack, really aggressive kind of defence. And actually, when Eddie came in, that's the first thing he tried to instill back into us. I mean, because that's the kind of thing he sort of, in the debrief for that 2003 World Cup, it was almost conflicting styles in terms of the way you guys wanted to play, and that particular style won on the day. I mean, do you think that, because Eddie's always learning from stuff like that, isn't he?
Yeah, we'd probably, not getting too technical, we'd probably slid a bit in defensively there, so we're prepared to give up some space. Obviously not on the line, but in other parts of the field, we'd be prepared to give up a bit of space, make the tackle, reset, and then if you can get people to the edge, like as you know, defensively, you can probably have the advantage. So you might give up some space, but if you trust that, whereas we realise there's opportunity for line speed, particularly in those conditions, time, space. It's like all sports, particularly all ball sports, reduce that. It makes it a little bit harder. And when you can't play shift, it becomes even a better way of defending. So we learned from that. Like that's one thing with Eddie, and I think all good teams, and all good players, you're wanting to learn perpetually. Okay, how if we in that scenario again, what could we work on to improve that chances of being more successful? So we did make a big change. It's funny, like within a year, we went from being quite passive. There's times you had to do that to being quite like, no, we're going to be not necessarily up and in, but we're going to get off and we're really going to have more dominant tackles. That was probably the big step for us. We were probably a bit more passive defensively then compared to how we've probably moved after that. And that was one of the learnings because it matters. That stuff matters. It can force errors. It can make people think a little bit. Time and space becomes reduced. So it's a good way to play pressure footy.
It's funny with Eddie. Everyone we've ever spoken to has got an Eddie sort of story about how he was treated. Obviously, Hask and him throwing a hand grenade and telling the world's media that his hands were shit. Gitto sort of
Still
treats him like a schoolboy, and he still trembles whenever he walks in. How is it? Obviously, a wee bit earlier, but how was your relationship with Eddie, and what do you think? He's always under a bit of heat over here from our media and fans in terms of the way he does things. And what's your experiences of him and his good points that he still has that you had all the way back then?
Yeah, my experiences with Eddie, it's going to be different to Gitz. So Gitz was like, I went to school and was presented. We went to the same school. He was in year 8, so I'm showing my age. I went back as an old boy and spoke to him. And so, like Gitz was younger than me, of considerably, still playing Gitz. And Eddie started his professional career in end of 1997, 98, coaching the Brumbies. So I've been playing like internationally 94, 95, 96, 97 under Rod McQueen with Bob Dwyer. His first coaching gig professionally is with the Brumbies. So he had a really strong relationship, which he still does. I think it's his strength. He really encourages like strong leadership from his leaders. Like and then he'll challenge the young guys. And a part of, I think it's the amount of time that he invests in people like a Matt Gitto, yourself. It could be Georgie Smith. It could be an Adam Fryer. It's because he knows you're good. And he wouldn't invest that time in the challenge. And has he rounded that off? I think he has. I haven't been on the coaching pitch when he has, but I just know he has mellowed. I saw him, I was coached by him then in 97, 98. I was coached him at the end of my career in Japan when I was finishing at Suntory, and he was Kantoku there, and we actually won the Japan Cup, which was pretty amazing. And he was a lot of the same qualities, but he's actually found a way, and culturally it's different in Japan, so you've got to coach differently. And like a little thing, for example, as a Kantoku, as the head coach, if you stay on the field, the players aren't going to leave until you go off the field. So if you're pushing shorter, sharper sessions, let's get the detail, let's get the intensity up. As the head coach, you had to get off the field. So you had to trust, and then you do your small groups, and he encouraged the younger players to work with the senior players to work on their game without the Kantoku being on them. When we said it was done, was going off. So like a younger Eddie probably wouldn't have done that. He would have felt he needed to stay on. So that's an example. But for me, it was always, we were working together. Coaches, senior management, and your leaders. I was vice captain at the time. I was captain in 2001. So I had a different relationship. We sort of had a relationship where, the day before we'd play in Canberra, we'd look at the game plan or what we're looking to execute for the captain's run that day, going into the game tomorrow. We'd do that over a breakfast. We'd do that over a coffee. You'd always shout, which was always good. You always get a little extra fresh juice in there. Why not? And we really owned how he played as an extension of the group. And I think that's what I've always loved about Eddie. But he'll challenge you. He expects his leaders to lead. And if not, he'll challenge you in a way which is, well, why did we do this? Why did we do that? But at the same time, and I learnt this, and this is what I've always loved about him, he likes to be challenged back. Yeah. And it's like, well, hang on, why are we doing that? I feel we should be doing this. Why are we going to driving more? It's because we're following everyone else, but we're pretty good at the breakdown. Let's do that. What could we do better? Let's stick to what we know. And then he'd look at it. Sometimes he'd go away and go, yeah, I like that. Sometimes he'd go, no, I heard what you said, but we're gonna continue down this path. So that's my take with him. And his biggest strength, and I think you've probably seen it during this period, I think all good coaches, I like a lot of different sports. Coach Belichick, he if they have a loss, he feels as though they could coach better. It's on us. And if they do well, he'll deflect to the playing group and say they did a really, really good job. He'll keep their feet on the ground. He won't be over the top with praise, but he'll say they was really proud of the effort, this, but he's going to protect his team. And I think that's always a sign of a really good head coach. There's no deflection and saying, well, they didn't follow the game plan, or this. He's got your back. And I think the players play for him. Did it surprise me that England came back and responded the way they did in Brisbane, where the Wallabies hadn't lost since 2016 to you guys? No, it didn't, because that's that's the response you get from a playing group who are under the cosh, so to speak, and they're playing for their coach. Because if they weren't, they wouldn't have put in that effort. No. You kind of know when they're not.
I think that's a very good point, actually, because a lot of the media, a lot of the public are sort of say Eddie out, and the one thing that the one group that isn't saying Eddie out is the players. There isn't stuff leaking out saying, we're not having a good time, we're not enjoying it, we feel like he's lost the plot. Because actually, I interviewed him for another podcast that I did, and he said one of the things he felt probably around the time he was working with you was that all he cared about was winning, and he sometimes would sacrifice the relationships or the mentality and win at all costs. And that the mellowing, the old Eddie versus the new Eddie, it's a bit like AD, BC AD in the Bible. There's sort of Old Testament Eddie that where the story is kind of, and then you've got New Testament Eddie, which is kind of a bit more mellowed. Do you see that in him as a person now, where he's sort of? I know there's lots of times he had these explosions because when he coached us, there was a little bit of fear of like, fuck, I'd met him before, I'd always gotten really well with him. But we're always a bit fearful about old Eddie coming out, but I never saw it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. But I just think he has mellowed. I think players, you get better. You have different experiences, and how could I deal with that better? I think that's definitely been the case with Eddie. And your point there, I think, and this is what he's, to me, from an outsider looking in, England got to the final, lost to South Africa. There's learnings from there. What are you going to do differently if you get a chance to work on that cycle? So there's always a 4-year cycle, but there's the here and now. There's a great saying by Craig Bellamy. He's one of the best coaches in all sports for Melbourne Storm. He says, everyone talks about a 3-year plan. He says, I'll just work on a 1-year plan. He says they just consistently turn up. They're just a machine, Melbourne Storm, and they're a reflection of Craig Bellamy, the way they go about stuff. And I think if they lose in a final, he's going to do things a little bit differently to try and get themselves a chance. And what have we done? What are our learnings? I think he's looked back. He would have done a debrief with his coaching group and the players, etc. What have we got to do? So in maybe 4 years, if we get to that, what are the things we need to add on? So if we get ourselves in that position, that's all everyone's working hard to get themselves to, then what can we do better? And I think that was part of us post-2003. Got sacked in 2005, but we made a conscious effort 2004. Like one example was trying to increase our line speed. The other thing was trying to get more passes in, play a slightly different game and not be so predictable, maybe spread the field a little bit, having a bit more passing from our forwards, etc. Like just having that ability to mix. You can always go back to what you know. And so that was part of it. So we knew we were going to maybe take a couple of steps backwards to go forward, but if you're taking a couple of steps backwards and you're losing by the smallest of margins, whereas when he started with England, he was winning by the narrowest of margins. You're finding a way to win those type of matches. It just changes. That little pressure gauge, which goes up with coaching and the team, changes when you're winning by narrow margins. The flip side to that is when you're losing, but he's always had the courage to make changes for the better of the team moving forward. And if everyone's running north, he's not prepared to run south because he feels there's an opportunity. That's kind of who he is, and that's part of. That's probably why he doesn't win everyone over. But he has that. He really looks. As I've said many times, he's probably watching a game in Kazakhstan now. Should be prepping for the third one. But if there's a game in Kazakhstan, I think Georgia played Italy on the weekend. He's probably looking at that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He won't exhaust. He'll exhaust anything to see what is there something which might be applicable to what we're trying to achieve. Maybe not this week, but moving forward.
So then what was the phone call like in 2008 where you thought you were probably going to retire and then...
I was in Toulon. I was actually in Toulon playing.
And he rings you up and says, "Do you fancy coming?"
He said, "I'm calling George on how I be, blah, blah, blah." I says, "Mate, just talking, mate, from Suntory. They're really interested in you coming over and playing, mate." And I said, as a player coach, I said, like, I'm kind of done, mate. I'm 34, going in my 35th year. I said, it's been so long years, pro de deux, like straight after, and I was thinking, like, the body needs a bit of a break. He says, "No, we'll look after that. You can go and you'll turn yourself up in good nick. You just got to be ready for Abashiri, which is the end of July, and the season starts September. We'll work through all that." He says, "But they're really interested for you for a 3-year deal." I nearly, like, was having a little croissant, a little espresso, I nearly, like, choked on it. I said, "Did you seriously say 3 years?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "So not playing, like player coach?" He says, No, mate. You'll play. Yeah, of course you'll do some coaching. You naturally do that, mate." He says, "But no, it's for playing, mate." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, are we going to take it sort of year by year? Because there might be a point where if my playing's not right, you might want to transition to me coaching more." He says, "We'll worry about that when we get there, but we can have a meeting. We're really interested in coming over and flying over. I know you got your deciding match against Racing. We're playing Racing in Toulon. We'll come over there. You've got all the information. We'll meet Tashida-san, and you'll get the person who's from Suntory here in the UK who can translate for Tashida-san. And we're really interested. This isn't a joke, mate." They turned up. They were in Toulon at Stade Maillot. We had a great sort of post. We had a win, which got us up, and then they came around and we had a bottle of champagne and we celebrated me signing up for something which I just didn't expect. It came out of the blue, and it was the best. It was such a great time of the life, like for myself, the family. They got a Japanese experience. You've had some time over there, and it actually. It's a different style of rugby, and we've seen how it's evolved 2015 to 2019, and that ball keep and they play. It's fast. It's a different. it's you adapt or you
They're
die.
good on the weekend again.
Yeah, they can play.
I love his impression of.
It's very Eddie, isn't it?
Matt Gitto, unbelievable impression. That's an equally good impression. It's like he was in the room. I was thinking, fucking hell, mate. No, I'm not messing around. I fucking love it.
We'll have that conversation if we need to, mate.
I've always wanted to ask just one question about Toulon, right? Because obviously you were the first. I'd say the first megastar that went there in regards to signing for Toulon. And I remember my old agent was telling me a great story. And it might have been old wives' tale, but I just need, you're panicking. It's nothing too dodgy.
Is this an urban myth?
That's what I wondered, that you had in your contract that you didn't do contact training. So the lads were, if you were walking back in with your boots, just as the other lads were walking out, they knew it was full on contact. Is that true?
No, it wasn't in the contract, but it was kind of, Tana knew I'd had a long season. So when we,
Right.
like there's some times where it was a bit crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's like you're playing, it's the second team, and like in all rugby competitions, it's no different, every rugby club. But, you know, like I don't want to be over the ball. I'm getting counter-up by the under-19 bloke at a dodgy neck. I'm going, like, really, come on, mate. Like, you're Tuesday Warrior. Let's just let it calm down. Like, I'll put my hits in when I need to on the weekend. And Victor Matfield was pretty good at it too. Just picking your moments on when to like do that contact, doing the drills on the pads, getting good body position. I love the whole 100% position, 70% contact. I love that.
Because there's a great rumour that
I'd always say that.
the lads would be, you could be like, sort of everyone's changing, everyone's sort of wandering out of training. George obviously out there warming up, and you'd see him come back in, boots in his hand, and the lads would be like, oh, for fuck's sake. And in my mind, because obviously I was younger at the time, I was thinking, wow.
Yeah.
I said, mate, do you reckon I get something like that in my contract? Yeah, it's like, no, absolutely not, mate.
Australians
It was an understanding with Tana. Tana was good for
Oh,
me.
really?
Yeah,
So it was unwritten. It was like an unwritten constitution, but it was part of the fabric of the deal.
GG, I know you're good over the board. If you need to, like, it's all good. Like, just sit this one out. But there was times it was like you need to get out there and just show you've still got a little bit going over that pad. Just a little 70%, 100% position.
Great position. Great position, Georgie.
I've not heard that expression. 100% position, 75% intensity.
Yeah, do you like that?
I love that.
Yeah, it's really good.
Just go real fast. Stop.
And then like you're coming out, and then you'd be the Tuesday where I could see you.
No.
You'd be coming in blindside, and then all of a sudden it's survival mode. Then you might
Or
just
crop
step it up.
roll, and your knee just goes the other way.
When you don't have raw talent to rely on, you have to do that.
What skills do you have? I could just run really fast and trip into you and maybe take you out. Yeah.
Jeremy Paul was one of the best I've seen at managing a contact session.
Oh, yeah.
He'd just talk
you
his
said
way.
that before. Yeah, you did it with
just
questions.
talk his way. He'd just ask countless questions, and every coach goes, "Oh yeah, I'm coaching well if they're asking questions," and he'd just be like, "Right, we're done. So see you later."
But the funny thing is, when we went to Japan, like the first year, and then it was like the scrimmagings. You played out.
Yeah.
It's 100% position. It's 100% like, and that's good. Like especially if it's not a long, super long session because that.
But they normally are
dangerous.
super long, aren't they? Or do they control it a bit better?
We changed that.
Mate, we were 2 hours and 30 minutes. Me and Marnonu, 2 hours and 30 minutes. Some young kid came in, flew into him. You know they love the sort of the dive tackle. Flew in, no arms, into his knee. An hour and 45 minutes into it, I was on the sideline having a rest. So I'd swap in and then give it half an hour and swap back out. And literally everyone was like throwing up, going, "Oh my God, you've just killed the number one star signing." But it was okay. But 2 hours 30 minutes it was. But yours no different.
No, that was one thing. Which, and I must admit this with Japan, and like Tony Brown, great coach, great player. He was at Sanyo, now Panasonic, and they made some changes. So like you talk about me going over, and there's players before me, Toto, Kefu, really quality international players, but actually made like the buzzword legacy. They made big changes into how teams prepared, they played, and they were really, and they still are a very, very successful team. Panasonic Suntory's like historically very, very good. Their preparation, they'll look for the best teams, the best practices, and they want to learn. So if you could train and prepare better, and I think the notion was like I use that one of getting off the field when you don't have to wait for the head coach. Like get the job done. Here's what we need to achieve, and then we get off and recover. So we really were big on recovery. So like, but which you think's pretty normal, but that we were really, really big on that recovery. Not hard to do in Japan with the onsen and ice bins, but the massage, the mobility, the flexibility. So we spent a real targeted focus on that. So it was a big change, and being on the field for less than 80 minutes, and that was our longest session. And then the idea that we could achieve everything in shorter time. Was beyond the guys because they've grown up in high school, university, coach training for 2 to 3 hours, and they're thinking, no, you need to be on that. No.
More's better, innit?
But we can be shorter and sharper, really specific, coaches need to prepare really well, and the players need to be prepared and ready to train at that level, which was part of that whole so that whole athletic preparation, everything just went to the next level, and they all transformed. So they went from, like, for example, there's one handful of rice, because everyone likes their rice in Japan. It was like, no, you can only have one handful of rice for the tight forwards and others. And like, I didn't need it for some of the outside backs because they were already shredded and like just in Spartan mode anyway. And then the protein and the salad and the food was done beautifully at Suntory. And then just not eating and drinking lots of protein, and they just turned into Spartan mode. And then Eddie, obviously knowing he wants his tight five, having 10% high speed running, they need to hit these targets and all this sort of stuff. They just turned into this athletic, really skillful. They were really amazing and transformed within 12 months. And like, the second year was my final year, and then they went on a spree. Like Fourie Dupree and Georgie Smith came over. They had a run, but that's that ability. They've actually, they learnt. They saw the success. How can we do better? We can fit it into a shorter period of time, and no wonder, like they're going from strength to strength. And it's great seeing someone like Tony Brown, and I know Jamie Joseph was over there. They played. They understand the culture. They're giving back, and the players. Oh, Tony Brown. Oh, no, Jamie Joseph. Oh, Eddie's son, it's beautiful. Like, I was George's son, and I was a young halfback called Hawassa. It brings a smile to my face. And I was his senpai. And when I finished, he gave me his jersey, and he was crying and all this sort of stuff, because they really want to learn. And so if you said, let's spend 5 minutes after training, let's do some one-on-ones. Here's some 9 stuff. Here's how we bounce out. Here's how we get to the second defender. Load short, load long, pass short, pass long, use your legs, all that kind of stuff. They're just writing down the notes. They're doing this. They're looking at the tape. They're coming in and they're tapping you on the shoulder, just wanting to do those extras. So it's really it's a place of like looking to get better and applying themselves in a way which is, there's a buzzword over there called ishiki. So ishiki's, I'm getting very Japanese tonight now.
I love how much you loved it, quite evidently.
Yeah, ishiki is like intent. Like we talk about having, like where's your mindset?
Don't look to Hask for any Japanese.
Sort this. It's definitely ishiki. So they definitely turned up with that real intent to do things as well as they possibly can, and they apply that to all parts of life in Japan. Ishiki sort of could be the best sushi chef, or at that, if that's your task, they want to do it as well as they possibly can.
Did you experience in Japan those two belief systems, Tatama and Honi? The kind of societal. What society thinks and what you personally think. So, like you said about if Eddie doesn't go home, then none of the coaches go home, and thus the players never go home. So everyone's always trying to pretend to be doing all the right thing. Did he kind of get rid of that a little bit? Because we tried to do it when we were at Rico. We had 63 players in the squad. And so, for example, a scrummaging session, I'd have to go through 8 sets of front row, 6 of which we're never going to play. But you couldn't say, I did say, oh, listen, can we not, they go off and do that over there and we'll do this. Now, all for one and one for all, you can't move them, because that's what everyone needs to be part of it. It's societal kind of norms. Did you find that over there quite difficult, where they don't really have a word for no and you sort of try to feed in, or did Eddie not?
No, it's hard. Look, they don't say no.
No.
Like, the word no, like, it's negative. Unless like they might say, well, maybe difficult, muzakashi. But no, it was, I think, and again, we keep coming back to it. That's probably the biggest change that he did. Like, it was like, let's get in, let's do this. We'll do it together. We'll get our scrummaging in. It's going to be at a certain level. It's going to be a certain intensity. But we'll get it done, and then we can leave. And then we recover. We'll turn up. We'll look. We'll review it. And the coaches would have stayed on a little bit longer because they got to cut up and be ready for the next day. But it was, that was a big piece of it. And everyone responded. And you got to realise some of the players, a lot of the players aren't professional. They're sort of semi-amateur. They're working within the company, and they're driving maybe 2 hours a day to get to work, and they're 2 hours to training. So, they've got to look after themselves. So I think that was a big part of it. So minimise the amount of time on their feet, because they're putting in big shifts off the field as well.
What is so interesting about having a conversation with someone like you is just there are so many things to talk about which we can never fit into a single pod. I'm very conscious we haven't, and you tell me if I've got this wrong, but the two almost defining teams of your career, the Brumbies and the titles that you won with them. I mean, funny enough, we did something with Zinzan the other day and asked the question, would anyone have ever beaten the Auckland Blues team of 96, 97? No?
Well, we beat them in a round game, like in the finals. They just changed the game.
Yeah.
Zinny's like...
Zinny, Jonah.
Anyone who's Zinny, Zidane, Zinzan Brook, like Zinny's, there's something special with his word Z, isn't it? Like Zorro. Like he was a freak. Like he set up a try, set up many tries, but there's a try, we lost to like we did during that 96, 97 period, they just changed the game, that All Black team. And part of that was the Blues with Fitzy, and you had Michael Jones. You just had, an incredible team.
Brown.
Yeah, Olo Brown,
Ian
incredible.
Jones, yeah.
Lee Stensis was the 12, but he was he was just he just held them together in the middle. But then you had a young guy called Carlos Spencer, who was just this cavalier doing what he does. It was just amazing. And we played at Dunedin, and we turned the ball over on a hot on attack. Zinni sees Cully 30 metres away, could have thrown a naught, but just throws this ridiculous sevens reverse, Cully at full pace, the Paraparam Express, from freaking Wellington, when his knees were good, and Cully was at full pace. And I think I fell over, he ankle broke me. I look like an idiot. If you ever see that on YouTube, you'll see this try from Cully, and he just runs zigzagging, and I'm just sort of trying to follow him. I fall over, and he scores this thing under the post. But Sinzan's vision to go from, I talk about turnover, hits Cully, and they went 80 metres. That was kind of how they could play at that time. And he saw things like no one else. He played like a 10, but then he could bash you. He could put people's ribs through. He'd get a few, and then he'd knock a drop goal over. And he had a real intensity, but he was...
Still has a real...
He has real intensity, but he wasn't a big... He was just... he was Zinni. That's it. He was some player.
But it was interesting because we asked him the question, and it's interesting to hear you back up just how good they were. But I think if you're looking at Super Rugby, you would say that Auckland Blues team, your Brumbies team, possibly the Bulls around 2007, and several sort of Crusader era teams. But what was it that was so special about your Brumbies side? I mean, you had some unbelievable players around.
Yeah, I think we had some incredible players. I think of when you mention incredible players, I think of Joe Roth straight away. He was like our Giggsy. He was just this amazing natural, just. He made it look easy. He was a sneaky trainer too, Roffy. Don't worry about that. He makes it look as though but he was a sneaky trainer. Yeah. And but he was some player.
He's one of those bonkers guys where he stopped playing for Australia at 26 something.
Yeah.
And he had 67 caps.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking.
I played against him when he for Wasps second team against Oxford. Was it Oxford or Cambridge? Oxford, yeah. And he went over there and studied, and I was like, "What?" I was like,
so my brother played with him at Oxford, and not just.
In the showers or in the field?
On the field they played with. It's a few years of varsity, but he said he's just the most amazing guy as well as the most fantastic player.
Yeah, really dry sense of humour, very intelligent, funny guy, a great person to have in your team. Yeah. Just when you talk about him, brings a big smile to your face, but he just always felt really comfortable knowing he's on the field. Yeah. I had a great relationship. I was obviously played a lot with him. We played sevens together, so he was 18 just out of school, and he's going away playing Fiji for an Australian sevens team with young Ben Tune, so they all came through at the same time, and I was a few years older than those guys. So he'd just control that left side. He's a left winger, so it's kind of if Roffy called it, he got the ball type thing. Yeah, you had Lathos, you had all these people in that time, but he was just an amazing player, and it was kind of if Roffy calls, he gets the ball.
How good was Ben Tune as well? He got his career cut short, didn't he?
Yeah, he had really degenerative knee issues as well, and then he was some player, and he was just he was not your normal winger.
No.
He would run through a wall. He could hit hard, but then again he could just run all those subtle lines. You felt very comfortable having Joey on the left, him on your right. And in between, there were some pretty good players like Tim Orr and Jason Herbie.
Because we talked about in the past that in that centenary test in '99, that was that centenary test because Dan Luger was rapido at that time, wasn't he? And they made it a big thing of Tune versus Luger, wasn't it?
Because all the teams that you play that Tri-Nations era as well. Yeah. Because obviously I was still at school, even though you look younger than me, because you've aged very well. I've had a hard paper round. Because I had to do all the contact sessions that you didn't. I was 100% effort, 100% intensity. Boots out, espresso. But that was I remember those Tri-Nations games with the fluorescent Adidas balls, all those kind of mad games, watching them, just the intensity. And then that Super Rugby era was just the best. You think of all those players. I think that era... those trying to captured so much of my generation's imagination to want to go and play because the Premiership was good, but it was always when you tuned into it and just the spectacle of the Southern Hemisphere sides. I mean, did it feel like an amazing spectacle at the time?
Well, it was a period. It was funny, wasn't it, with rugby where you're pioneering the change. It was allowed 5 tries and you got extra. It was all this was really promoting attacking rugby. We used to get heckled over here for saying, they don't know how to tackle it. It was kind of there's a bit of that. We got better at that, but it was just really open canvas to really, hey, let's attack. Here's how we can do it. Actually, we could potentially, and we made the probably change in 1999. We made the final in 97 against Zinni and those boys. We got beaten by them in Eden Park, but that was our second year. We just missed out on the finals before. And so we'd started really, really well. And that was with Rob McQueen, and we were really focused. It was a bit of an ambitious goal. We said we want to be the best attacking team in Super Rugby. But we kind of, we weren't the Auckland Blues, but we sort of worked. That was what we were aiming to be. Then come 99, we had a bad season, had a few injuries. Then 99, Eddie and the senior group, we said, and I was away on that end of 98 tour, and they did a really good off-season. It came in, no, we're really going to change the way we play. We're really going to just ball keep, set up stuff, which looks like, they call it Morse code rugby. It was like, we're going to set it up for multiple phases. But like, if we do well on the first phase, let's just play rugby. But we're really going to be positioning ourselves around the field and understand, okay, we might move it to create a mismatch and do all that kind of stuff. So we really put a lot of thought into it. But that ultimately worked on hanging on to the ball. So we became really, really good at like our second man in, so to speak. But holding onto the ball. We could hold onto the ball for long periods of time. We practiced that way. We'd do scrimmaging against each other. And it wasn't about kicking the ball away. It was about, that's the last thing you probably have Eddie, don't kick type thing. It was like, let's hang on to the ball, like second man in. So we practiced all that. And so I think we got a glimpse of the team we could be. We missed out narrowly on the semi-final in 99. We played the Blues and Eden Park in the last game. We needed to score 5 tries to potentially scrape through. And we needed the Waratahs to beat the Crusaders, which they never did. Anytime the Waratahs needed to do something, they fell over like a cheap suit. And then they got in on 4th, the Crusaders, and proceeded to beat the Highlanders. And they went back to back, having shocked the Blues the year before. But in that second half, we needed to score 4 tries in 40 minutes, and we did it. And we did it actually quite well in greasy conditions. We're onto something here, like beating the Blues in Eden Park, 4 tries in one half. We're onto something here. There's that little light bulb. And then we went and we changed the game in 2000. The players, we put a great block of training. We were really conditioned. There was that belief, hang on, we can take our game anywhere and we can do this. We came up short to the bloody Crusaders by 1 point at home, but we got the job done the following year. But that was that period of like really special group who I think the work started probably 98 when we weren't playing so well through that 2001, 2002. We won it again in 2004. That was a big call. And the game changed a little bit, but particularly that 99 to 2001 period was pretty special. It was a pretty special team, but that mentality and the game was rewarding you to hang on to the ball for long periods of time, and we really backed ourselves to do that. Yeah. We would kick, like you have to kick a bit, but we really worked hard on that.
It's a very, very special team, that. As was the side that won the World Cup in 99. And am I right in saying that off the back of it, you said the overriding emotion was relief? Yeah,
it is, I think. I think when I look at all sporting people, like even Djokovic, he won yesterday, he wins, he's happy, but it's like, it's a lot of work's gone into this. You'll take your time out and enjoy it. I'm not sure, you can talk about winning 2003. There's obviously huge joy and everything, but there's a part of it which is just relief, and then it hits you. But you just want that. What was nice about that final was probably with 10 minutes to go, we kind of knew it was boxed away. And so I think Chris Witts came on and we were able to clear the bench, and everyone's like, okay, we've actually done this. Whereas you're not going down to the last play of the game, and that brings another level of anxiety. But even when at full-time heater was going, we've done it. We've actually, we wouldn't have been the only team who set a goal to say, this is what it looks like 18 months down the track. When it gets to here, we're going to be the last week. And when you actually accomplish it, it's like, we've done it. Like, wow. Isn't that amazing? And then you just want to share that with your group. It's funny, I always get accused of being the last to leave the change room because I'm in no rush after a game, win, lose or draw, because once you leave the change room, that moment's sort of gone. And so it was one of those situations where we kind of didn't want that to end. And you enjoy those moments in the change rooms. Like on the field, it was great doing the walk and celebrating with your fans, seeing some of your family. But yeah, the overwhelming one was relief. And then you're always going to celebrate and have some good times. Cigars going to pop later, and you'll struggle through. You might see a black crow the next morning, but it's going to be that's always the case. I think that's other finals which I've been lucky enough to play in and be successful in. The other side's not so great, but you're really, really disappointed, but you just got to move on. But you don't kind of want to move on from that in too quick a space of time.
I wanted to ask you, did it change your life in regards to that period of winning the World Cup? I mean, obviously Tinds married a princess and did pretty well. He's been dining out ever since. But what about yourself in terms of it? Oh, yes, it's a relief, but what was the kind of the reach like in Australia? Did it make a difference? Did you find your life change in that period of time?
Yeah, it sort of changed. It sort of, like it was, rugby became more prominent. Like it was prominent. Like we obviously went to the 95. It was going to be try to like defend it and we lost. We got knocked out in the quarterfinal by England. Surprise, surprise. And then we get to 99 and we get the job done. But it's funny, that 99, we were often following the footsteps of the cricketers. So, you know, Steve Waugh and that Aussie cricket team won the World Cup here in England. And then we went on there and won. I think it's sort of that period. I think afterwards was the Olympics in 2000. And there's a lot of energy. Our netball team won. Like there's a lot of winning going on in Australia at that time. And we sort of, not that you felt like obliged, but you just felt, well, that was kind of what we did. And like hockey teams, and there's a real.
That was the whole time of the Institute of Sport, and everyone was just putting it down to that, weren't they?
Yeah, it's a combination of doing that, and like people are going to follow, aren't they? And that became. I remember actually on that Institute of Sport, and I was on scholarship. I lived in Canberra, so I had like my little traineeship, and I was learning about a bit of sports admin, and then I was like, you're coming in with your teams, Hask and the Wasp or whatever in England, and I'll be doing your passes, giving you access to all stuff. And Linford Christie and Colin Jackson, mind you, I've been called Colin Jackson a couple of times around here. It's quite funny, doppelganger. But anyway, I put their passes in, and they trained at the RAS. They did a couple of the Grand Prix, but they were there just to train, and everyone would stop at the RAS and watch them train. They were proper athletes, and they just like it was like here a pin drop. Like you got the Australian rowing team, you got the basket. Everyone's at the RAS is doing. It's sort of like who's who in the zoo, and then those two turn up. It's like, okay, let's watch them train. And it was pretty impressive. So I think that's what the RAS was. It was renowned for that. Sports science, sports medicine, recovery, all the stuff which high-performance places do now.
It's all about the thing that everyone said. If you see it, you can... Everyone says you see it, you achieve it. If someone comes in like Colin Jackson, I mean, who's won everything, you're going to watch what he does and you're going to try and take it on and then push it further, aren't you? It's just nature.
Yeah. I want to know about just, the mentality thing. So obviously you don't have a career like you had without being an unbelievable competitor. And obviously, I wondered, you talked about kind of winning a World Cup.
Never gives a putt.
Oh, that's rubbish. No, especially when you have your golden putter. He can putt this guy.
The wand. The wand's gone. The wand's gone. He's dead and buried.
I've got one, but don't use it for golf. Mrs. likes it. She's always having. No, it's
the magic's only happened once.
Yes, we need. But I just wondered, because you say sort of like winning a World Cup and the relief and like living those moments, and then you talk about kind of the disappointment. I'd love to know, because I never had the opportunity to play with you or against you, what it kind of was like. What you were like? Were you a fierce competitor? Did you deal with losses like badly? Did you go mad with the successes? I'd love to just kind of let our listeners know about kind of what made you tick really in that respect.
Yeah, like I'm competitive. I am. Like he knows that. Like I think everyone who plays it, everyone's competitive.
Yeah, but there's competitive and there's like you won't fucking let anyone win. Obsessive, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not kind of obsessive. I wouldn't say that. Like I have that switch on, switch off. I can switch off pretty, and like win, lose or draw. Like I can be. I'm not going to hang on to that for the days, and the next day, like you'd be gutted to review it. Like I think that's one thing. I like the idea of being consistent on that stuff, so you can always improve. Like when you win, like you sometimes gloss over what you can improve on, but you never played a perfect match, be it personally or the team. When you lose, it's obvious you need to improve. So there's always things to look at. So pretty consistent with that. So I think. What I didn't like from a competitive perspective is if you haven't left it all out there, and particularly when I led with my team, I didn't like it if we'd lost and you want to put it all out there every time you play, and if you're good enough, then you win. If you're not, but you've sent.
Would you call people on that? So if I was in a team with you and you'd left it all out there and you'd seen someone like me and you hadn't, would you be vocal? Would you sharpen someone like me?
I'd say in a group situation, right, I wouldn't do that. Like I don't think that's not great.
No.
Because we've all been there. Like in terms of like being, you say, that's a question to the group. Did we put everything we possibly could? Like, yeah, we made some mistakes, but is there more to give? Because I think you send a message to the team. Like we played England over that period prior and then after, but like we wanted them to know, like we're always going to come. Like we're not going to give up. Like we're coming at you. Yep, you're a good team, and beat the All Blacks, whoever we're playing, South Africa are playing. Like it's really important to show that intent, and I think, and that's what I really drove with my team, and I wanted to be part of that. And I'd like, and it's funny, you speak to some other players who played with me. It's kind of like I wouldn't ask anything of the players that I wasn't prepared to do myself. So if I'm going to ask for a big effort and physical. I've got to turn up and do that myself and do all those things which is required. Or if I'm going to ask everyone to prepare as best they possibly can for that week for the biggest, then I'm going to do that. So that comes with me. But I think you got to dust it off. I don't think there's no point on hanging on a great performance or a poor performance for too long, because you're only as good as your next match. So I think that's a big piece. But yeah, winning matters. Don't get me wrong. Like I don't like losing, but I'm prepared to learn from it. So if we've had a loss, how can we correct that? But yeah, I like, he knows it. Like I think we all like being inside the arena and being competitive. And there's always a chat before the game. There's all this sort of stuff, but you can't hide when you're in the arena. It's a bit like watching Kyrgios, and what matters, they flip the coin and then they're serving, they're playing. Let's play. I did like that.
You a bit chirpsy?
I think I was a halfback, so I think everyone thinks. I don't think there's a halfback that hasn't been chirpsy.
Have you ever buried anyone on the field?
Who would you say was your best? Who did you have the best sort of chat
Rapport
with?
with?
Tete-a-tete and scrum.
Like in terms, like we had some
I
good
can
little
imagine
chats
you
with
and
Dawes.
Marshy.
Marshy.
Actually,
But Marshy we played a lot against. So we played under-19s. We started in under-19s, and they spanked us. They had a pretty good team. Norm Berryman, Tane Randall, Mertz, some others. I think there was, they just had an awesome team. They spanked us at Dunedin. We had and Marshy's super competitive. Yeah, well, it goes back to 19s. It all started, I think, post-game we had a drinking game, and on Norm Berryman, Tane Randall, like Aussie Kiwi, and they're doing all these bouncing, jump, boom, boom. It's all a bit busy, and you're learning the game on the run. Like there's no, bang, and then they're looking this way, the no-look pass, it comes back at you. So they're all, goddamn Aussie doesn't know how to drink, and they're just throwing everything back at me. So I just know everything. When in doubt, I'm just jumping up because I'm just thinking. And then Tane Randall gives me a little nudge. He says, "Mate, we're gonna stitch up Marshy now. So all we're gonna do is gonna go from him. He's gonna miss me, come to you. He says, you need to look at me, but then do that, and it's gonna go." It's going to skip and it's going to go to Marshy, but just look at me with that one and Marshy won't see it. He'll be thinking it's coming back to me. So we just stitched up Marshy and everything was going back to Marshy. So they did what they were doing to me to Marshy. And he's going, "What are you doing? I thought it was pick on the bloody Aussie." This is when he's 19. What is this? This is shit. And he blew up. So that was kind of an insight into Marshy and our relationships that we always caught up afterwards. I think that's the other thing. When you talk about that on-off thing, I sort of jumping around. 95 World Cup, after we'd lost, Rob Andrew knocks us out in the quarterfinal at Cape Town. The English partners and wives were staying at our hotel, the Wallaby, because they had to be in separate hotels. And so Jace Leonard, I think Jerry Guscott, Big Jono, their wives and partners were staying with us. And we said after the game, we said, "Boys, what are you going to do?" "Oh, we know the wives are a little bit, they feel as though after a win like we should, but they're not allowed back at our hotel." We said, "Just come over to ours. We'll be at the bar, and we'll take care. Like we'll make sure that there's no sort of untoward South Africans coming after your ladies." And so we were down.
That's a good idea. We'll chase off the South Africans and let it with a load of Aussies. Grease up.
Don't worry, we won't let them do anything.
You'd be like, "Who's your partner?" "Jono." "Anyway, see you later, love." "Who's your partner?" "Neil Batt." "I'm still him."
So we proceeded to have a great night with the boys after.
I thought you were going to say the wives.
No, and it was so much fun. And we almost, I remember with Jace, it was like, "Mate, we're going to do this, like win, lose or draw, we're going to continue to do this." And we did this literally. I think we obviously couldn't get together after the World Cup final because we were doing
so
our thing.
late as well, though.
It was so late, but we would have made that intent always. We always, like win, lose or draw, having a beer with Jono up at Twickenham. Lol, his mum, "What are you saying to my son?" I was saying, "Sorry, Mrs. Delalio."
Yeah, she's terrifying.
I stumbled into a casino and bumped into Owen Finnegan and Jeremy Paul, actually. Funnily enough, they lived there. But we did caught up with a couple, but it wasn't...
Do you remember any just on the... Is there any sort of one line or one game you've absolutely buried someone? You know, like, there's nothing worse than trying to give someone some chat and it's not executed well.
Yeah, that gets brought up a bit. That was with Byron, wasn't it? That was directed at Byron. Every Kiwi thinks it was directed at them. New Zealand was actually directed at Byron Kelleher.
What did you say? I've missed this.
That's one of the greats.
Yeah. I did say that. You can read my lips and it comes out every World Cup. It's like one of those moments. It's gamesmanship. They've been giving us a hard time.
What did you say? I haven't...
Just said 4 more years. 4 more years.
78th minute, leading by 23 or whatever it was. 4 more years, boys. 4 more years.
There's no comebacks, though, is there?
No, it's kind of quiet. And they're all quiet. No one jumped to his defence. So it kind of was like, It's probably true. It's factually correct.
Nothing better than cutting factually correct chat.
Actually correct. Yeah. It's absolutely it's so interesting. The two things that fall out: A is the teams that you've been a part of, and the affection that you've got for your teammates. But also, what I love is the connection you've got with those that you've played against, and that is a really powerful part of the sport. The fact that you and Tinds have got such a good friendship, you and Marshy, everyone that's been along on the journey, and I hope that the modern lot will have that in years to come. Although I don't know, maybe that bit's up for grabs. I really want to get your view on what happened at the weekend. Did you see 4-0 Northern Hemisphere coming?
I didn't, but I expected a response.
Yeah.
I expected a response. Just having watched some of the Six Nations this year, and that, that's that back to back. Like we've all been in teams. Like if you lose and you realise that those moments aren't too big an obstacle to overcome within 7 days, and you need to win to keep the series alive. There's a different sort of intent. There's a different intensity to how you're going about that game. And if the other team sort of got that attitude, we've got one down, we've got two more chances, 2 bites of the cherry, then there's a chance for it to not go to plan. And I think that was definitely the case from what I saw. Yeah. New Zealand, Australia. I didn't see the other 2 games, unfortunately, but I didn't. I've seen the results. It didn't surprise me because. You'd know this from back in out. They used to make such a big fuss about Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. It's about turning up on the day and doing all the things which matter in rugby really well, and that helps you get a start. It helps you put pressure on and beat scoreboard, beat in other aspects of the game. And I knew they'd respond. And Ireland are they just know how to play against the All Blacks. They make them uncomfortable with how they play. And I think that's a real secret to beating any team, but particularly when you're playing the All Blacks, you've got to make them feel a bit uncomfortable and not dictate how they want to play, because they're the best front runners in history. They always have been, and they can impose themselves very well. But Ireland, super result, and it's not easy to win over there, and they did it emphatically.
Yeah, I think I actually thought, I didn't think that Wales would have got it done, but I thought every other team would have done the switcheroo. I think England in that first test, again, had enough control and everything else to win that test match, and then just sort of lost their way a little bit. But I felt that they showed some real intent and pace that they played at. And again, they started that way. I won't lie to you that I thought, what are they doing in the second half in terms of how they've let the sort of back into this game, because they could have easily been more up than what they were.
It's funny, isn't it, how that can happen?
Yeah,
with
you
really
talk about momentum, but I don't think there was a huge momentum shifts that weren't really as many card-wise.
I think it was the back-to-back kind of, the smaller bits, the errors, like a penalty into a turnover, into a fucked-up line-out, and on the surface they aren't massive things. There isn't like a huge link-up of plays, but normally in that first half it was like positive, no compounding errors. Yes. So in the second half they couldn't string more than 2 of them together, and then suddenly the game gets away from you.
In the first half they had so much control of ball and speed of ball and territory that I just, Australia were just continuously fighting fires. It's the same with I watching the Ireland game the week before. Ireland started so well and had so much control. Yeah. And it was almost a carbon copy. If Bowden Barrett has intercepted that ball and is allowed to go and he runs it underneath the post, but obviously a fantastic tackle. Yeah. There's you look the week before, Sever Reece does it. Yes. And then suddenly within 10 minutes they've scored 3 more tries. I mean, New Zealand still have that unbelievable clinical ability to just score points,
to score 20
ruthless.
Points. They can score 20 points.
And then even though
quickly.
Ireland lived with them in the second half, 2 tries each or whatever it was, but the damage was done in a 10-minute window. Whereas on this stage, they obviously the yellow cards, which were, I know a lot of people are saying that yellow cards are handing out.
I was going to ask you about
easy.
This,
But those yellow cards came off the back of the pressure that Ireland put New Zealand under, and they were justified. Arguably, one is a penalty try. Yeah. So and then the head-on-head is a head-on-head. Whether you like it or not, it's a red card under all day long.
So are you therefore? Because I think Eddie Jones said off the back of the England game that it's becoming a bit of a lottery. Ian Foster had a lot to say as well about the state.
But there are some, the intercept. The almost intercepts that end up in yellow cards.
Like Marcus Smith.
Yeah, Marcus Smith and
the winger.
The winger who hit it up and almost caught it, who was angry. Yeah, I think that isn't an intentional, a yellow card is for an intentional knockdown.
So what you just did, like, I've had debates with this over a few beers. Just surprise, the competitive Marshy. He just feels that if you don't get the intercept, you should be sin bin because you're a compromised defender, and he gets a compromised defender. But I said, well, you can. I feel like if your palms up, if you're doing that, palms down, you're not trying to catch it.
And if you're going into a tackle and you're doing that on purpose, you can tell the difference. Whereas someone who, I don't mind, what happens if he knocks it up and then runs on and catches it?
Yeah, if you get your fingers knocked it, that's you know,
you can bring it back and then you catch it.
I think that's why I think they're talking about reason, and I think there is reason. If someone can genuinely go to an intercept, you're always going to go it. It's where you're purposely leaving your hand out there to make it hard for him to pass it. Whereas if you can go for it, you should be able to go for it.
And if it's got speed, you're going to try and pick it because it's going at a bit of pace. And if it sticks, it's great. If not,
the irony is if he goes at that with two hands, for example, they would probably just give him a knock on. But it's because he's gone at one hand, they're going where you actually going.
But I don't think you could get up that high with two hands.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean? Like you get that little bit of extension.
I think there are certain bits where you know, because you say he's a compromised defender, he could have not gone for it and he would have had that guy covered with ease. It's not like he was done and dusted. He was only 5 yards away from it. He could have just turned his back, run after him, and he'd have had him covered. So,
I was surprised about. I know, I agree with both of the reason and what Tinds is saying in regards to there will be a reaction. I am surprised that it was across the board, but what I think it does show is the state of every single team is in a period-ish of transition with, you know what I mean, post that. I know we're only a year out for the World Cup, but would you say that any of those, because you would have labelled South Africa because of the selection policy, that things have changed in regards to the team that they're putting out? Not one of those teams is like a settled, ruthless juggernaut at this point in time. I think out of all the teams, Ireland was probably, France maybe, because they've been consistent. I thought the manner that they got pumped in the first game, I know that the scoreline probably flattered New Zealand, wasn't reflective, but still that was a pretty hammering. When New Zealand looked good, they looked unstoppable. Apart from that play after half time last week when Ireland were great, I sort of saw that. But I think now it just shows actually all these teams and what Eddie said, all these directors of rugby under a little bit of pressure. Everyone's trying to find settle. Is there a version of a 2003 England side that will go anywhere and beat anyone? No, I think anyone can beat anyone on these days. And I think at the moment, actually, this test series for every single one of these teams is vital pre-World Cup because they're going to learn a lot about themselves. Can they then react again? What were they like? What would it be like losing? How do they manage it? And learn a lot about their players and see who's prepared to turn up. So I think it's so good as well for rugby. There's all to play for next week.
Yeah, and 3 big test matches in a row. Yeah. That's a piece which you sort of don't normally do.
And also you don't get it to the point where it's one apiece more often than not. You know what I mean?
Can I ask you just about a couple of England individuals, the debutants / first starters, first of all? So Jack Van Portfleet,
he was fantastic.
Tommy Freeman.
I thought Van Portfleet was. I mean, we've got George here who obviously knows about it, but I think even with Danny though, I thought Danny last week was so good at how he kept the speed of the ball up, but Van Portfleet came on and did that, but also his sniping ability and his ability to spot holes around the rucks, and then his patience there. Someone's jumped into his eye line, he holds in it, he passes it behind his back. He just looked very comfortable in what he did. Obviously, he took his try exceptionally well. So I thought he was probably the pick of the bunch. I think, obviously Harry Arundel, in terms of how he came on in that first game, he set himself some unrealistic targets of where he's got to stay. But
why did he not pick Henry Arundel this week?
I think
if you do that, you obviously saw the try.
Saw the try, totally.
Why would you? In Australia, he'd have been thrown in week 2, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think they would have, definitely.
I said, go for it. Why did England not?
It's like James O'Connor in that test series when he played the 2 tries to the Australian Barbarian against the England side, and on the weekend he was playing. Yeah. It's a very. I thought that happened.
I think it's weird in the fact that you don't play Cokanasino and then you swap someone brand new in.
But that's not the question. The question is when a young talent comes along in England, like a Marcus Smith or Henry Arundel, they don't get the chance as soon as they arrive. They have to sort of go
Matt
through
Tate,
the
they say that I think there has been Anthony Allen, Matthew Tate, prime examples of where they were just lobbed in and never seen again. And Matt Tate, that game against Wales pretty much mentally ended his career. Anthony Allen started against New Zealand at centre. Was given a game the next week, was never seen again after that. I just think, you know better than with Eddie. I think Part of it maybe is some sort of protection. I was surprised that he didn't even come on for longer. I would have said, listen, if you're going to give him 5-10 minutes the week before he did that much damage, at least give him 20 minutes at a little taste. And I don't know what the logic behind that was. And I know that's one of the beauties of Eddie and why even defending him at all costs is hard, because sometimes he doesn't do what everyone thinks he should do.
It's just weird to then have Cock and Singer in 1 week and you bring Aaron on, he goes well, and then to bring Will Freeman out of nowhere and
Tommy Freeman,
sorry.
I can remember, I mean, he must have been 6 or 7-year-old Matt Gitto making his debut at Twickenham. Do you remember when he came off the bench wearing the scrum cap?
Full headgear.
What is it about Australia that chucks young talent into an environment like that and then sees it succeed? Why do England have to go through this sort of bedding in process? And
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But the flip side to that, I remember Johnny was 18 when he came over in 98, and it could have been, and it was a bad day at the office for England, but he learnt from it. And I guess there's that real tipping point, isn't it? Do you lose them? And maybe there's that protection. We saw what he can do. Okay, let's just wait. And maybe it's because the series was on the line as well. Yeah. I'm just thinking potentially he might stick with his experience and say, we know that could be something which we might unearth in the third test. Who knows what he's thinking? But as you say, sometimes you think he's going to go one way and he goes the other way with Eddie. But from an Australian perspective, I think there's just a history of doing that. I remember Bob Dwyer always used to say, like, if you're old enough, you're good enough. Yeah. Like your young Tim Horans, your young Jason Littles, like Campese started when I think he was 18 or 19. You think of Georgie Smith, I think he was 20, he was 19 playing for the Brumbies.
I mean, Tommy Freeman's only 21.
Yeah.
So it's not like he hasn't.
But I'm just interested why you would chuck Tommy Freeman in for a debut.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I honestly was.
I'd love to be a fan.
I would have said, just hypothetically guessing, I think it would have been to do tactically and in regards to, he had that moment. Maybe he'd be used as a weapon in the third test. Does he have the confidence that as he played enough first-team games, for example, in the Premiership, to have the confidence? That's what I mean.
Tommy Freeman's had a whole season.
Yeah, and I think that the nuances at international level are so drastically different to club level that it's all well and good getting a pass and a bit of space.
Maybe
defensively and tactically against a team that, the box kicking, the stuff, he probably hasn't had that much time to adjust into a completely different system. So maybe Eddie Wise
and
sees
also
everything.
He knows him going on against tired people at the end of a game. He becomes a whole different kettle of fish to handle.
One thing when we're talking about it here, we actually don't see that week of prep. Like maybe something's happening in training, which is just a little bit off, and I just. I'm going to go this way. Yeah. It's really interesting.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. That kind of stuff, because there's no way Eddie would never cut off his. Well, I would say 99% of the time would never cut off his nose to spite his face. He'd always want to put the best team out there to do it.
But he has a habit of holding talented young players back. Marrow was the same.
But I think Marrow couldn't fucking catch passing wise was awful and stuff. You just don't see it in training. He wasn't very good. And that's the thing. They talk about Danny Cipriani not being picked, but Danny mentally was disruptive if he wasn't selected. And all these players they want to play is that when you see them in training and they're just making the mistakes positionally, they're getting it wrong. They're not there. They don't have the physical edge. They're out their depth. Getting 3 good games in the Premiership, it means nothing in terms of international level. And I think, and also remember that in the UK or in England, we have no joined up system. So like New Zealand, if you look at the franchise teams, they all sort of try to play in a similar way that feeds in. One club plays this way, one club plays this way. They're all the different levels. Maybe, do you know what? I'm not, again, these are all hypotheticals, but reasons that he wouldn't pick them. Exactly what you said. Some issues in training, could be fitness-wise, could be does he have the mentality to play a game? Are there concerns? Because what you see and what the newspapers say is so different. And I think there must be some reasons.
It could be just him giving him the best opportunity to succeed.
He sees that as I'm not sure. I'm not for a moment saying that he doesn't want the best for him. I'm just interested as to if a guy does that, why you then.
But I think the general narrative would be to explain to people watching out is that exactly what George said, that the snapshot, you don't see training, and there is so much more to it. And the perception is, you see him score a wonder try, and he must be the best thing since sliced bread. But I've seen players turn up to training who have been hyped up. And they don't catch anything all week. They're the last ones off the floor. They can't get to grips with the thing. And or the players, you need a bit of bedding in. But some players are extraordinary, like Matt, who can fit straight in. And that's like a young Dan Carter, steps up to the plate and absolutely delivers. 21-year-old George Gregan steps up to the plate. Some guys have it, some guys don't. And I think there's much more to it than that in general.
I was. Where do you think Australian rugby is at the moment? Obviously, it's been through a roller coaster. We through lockdown. I might have even asked you the question about where it is as a club game. You know, where there's now talks about it sort of separating away from New Zealand and refocusing on its national game and sort of generating players. And, you know, you go back to the great days of Ramwick and Easts and all the sort of the clubs that are around Sydney. And do you see it needing to get back and reconnecting with the Aussie public? Or
there's definitely a need for that, and just feeling as though everyone's part of that I guess rugby fabric. Whereas if it's just a big focus on the tippy point, you lose a lot of people who support it. Not everyone's going to play at the tippy point, but they can feel part of it, and you can actually drive a lot of support, a lot of great goodwill, but also just the community feel. Like rugby clubs are great. And like you want your young kids to be inspired by, be it Super Rugby, be it their local club. Yeah, obviously the Wallabies is the pinnacle, but you want to get everyone involved all along the way, build that really strong pyramid. I don't want to get too technical on it, but I think that's a really emotive, important piece with rugby. And I think there's been a disconnect with that. And I think, to be fair, there's an understanding of that, and they need to make those changes. And there's been a big fill-up. You mentioned the Lions, the announcement of the Rugby World Cup for 2027, 2029. That's great from a commercial/financial perspective, but how do you tap that into the rugby community? How do you make that relevant and get them excited and feel as though they're part of whatever it is that we're building towards, the men's, women's, 15s, and like a once-in-12-year sort of tour of the Lions? How do we get that excitement in our rugby community? Because they're there. And it's a competitive environment, but it's not a new thing, competitive environment in Australia. You hear that all the time. There's always been AFL. There's always been rugby league. Like even netball's around the same time. Like the challenge for athletes and eyeballs for people supporting you needs to be there. And it's not, there's a participation piece, but like it is about, like, and sometimes we spoke about being competitive. Yeah. It is about winning. Like you want your national teams winning. Doing it in the right way, carrying yourself well.
Was that the problem? I feel that Australia, after 99, they were like, well, we're going to hang our hat on our national team and not really focus on... I mean, obviously, Brumbies did what they did through those two titles in Super Rugby. But and through that period, actually, Australian rugby was still quality through the Super 12s. But then once you hit that a little bit downward turn for the Aussie national team, where sort of after 2015 really, and it's gone down. When you lose your national team from winning and they're not winning games, then you don't. Everyone's like, well, we're not going to win that.
Yeah,
but we can't even go back to our club sort of stuff.
And how do you feed the next level tier of play below that, and that all does come from club. Like we've all got club stories. I remember. Prior to that, even my school, like you know where you came from in terms of the game of rugby, and you learn those fundamentals, that community piece, and you play. I think it's really important that you play. I think it's happened across a lot of rugby nations where they get put into academies, and that's all well and good, but you learn about best practices, etc. But you've got to play. Like you actually still need to play, so you can't be sort of warehouse and just kept in a sort of like an elite sort of bubble where you're not playing against other people and having different experience. I think there's a lot that matters if you're a young 19, 20-year-old who might be part of that, but if you're not playing in a representative team or there's not a competition for that level, you're playing your club, you're playing for your Randwick, you need to be doing that. And I think that's going to be really, really important, and that gets engagement, and the club feels as though they're part of it. Hey, we nurtured this person, they played for us. Yeah, they've gone into the Waratahs or the Brumbies, whatever it is, could be the Reds. And then all of a sudden they're playing for the national team, but they feel as though they're part of it. I feel that's a piece which Australian rugby is starting to understand, that you need your young men and women who might have some great talent and have been identified competing. You got to play. There's nothing substitute playing. You can look at tape, you can replicate it, you can do all the drills that you want, but nothing beats competition. I think that's where you really connect with grassroots again.
I think the good thing is from the team that you have now, it's a quality team. I think you've got, but it's built on
your... It's being tested though. Have you got your boots in case they call for...
No, snapped Achilles. No good. I'm right in that sweet spot of a snapped Achilles, so done enough running.
Right, okay.
That's like when you get to my age, that's when you
that may not be
no contact, bud. No contact.
Fullbacks every 5 minutes.
Yeah, dust off the 9.5.
But I think also your Australian Sevens team is having a resurgence at the moment as well.
Amazing.
Yeah, and yeah, women's team's amazing, but the Australian men's team, there's some fire young players coming through that. Yeah. I saw him play in Dubai and a couple of. They've had some massive moments recently.
Massive moments, yeah. And the women obviously won the series, which is fantastic. They've got some wonderful players there, and they keep developing that. They've got great skill sets. They're beautiful to watch too. Like they actually play a stunning style of sevens, balls moving and. Yeah, they pass so well on both sides of their body. Like they're some of the best passers in the game, and that's both our Aussie girls. I watch the Kiwi girls and the Canadian girls. Great teams, but I think from the resurgence, it comes from those things we just spoke about. But I think there's moments for teams. I think you've been through that with. There's that whole good to great, and how do you the way you get better is you have those experiences when you have a moment, which is going to happen on Saturday. It's at SCG. It's all on the line. They've had these moments, this Wallaby team for a period of time. Don't get me wrong, they've beaten everyone in the world, but they need to win this. They need to win this series. It's a defining moment, and that's a bit of not scar tissue. It's a bit of memory, not scar tissue. It's a good memory. Hang on, we got it done. We needed to. We responded. We had a chance to close it out in Brisbane, but we didn't. But we responded a week later, and we got it done against a very, very good England team. Then you take that in to your next campaign. You spoke about the here and now. I think that's really, really important. And they do have the ability with the players that they have. It's just getting those really great shared experiences. I think every really good team. You spoke about some of the teams I was lucky enough to play in with the Eelses, the Kearnses, the Roffies, etc., the Steve Larkhams. You can probably go back to moments where we were struggling, but we had a chance to win a big moment match and we got it done. Yeah. And so when you get those big moments again, you go, oh, hey, we can do this, and you look forward to it. And, you know, we won a lot of matches in that period where it was going down the wire, but there's that sense of, hey, we've been there, we've done that before, let's do it again, here's what we need to do. You need to have those experiences, and that's what's the beauty of sport. You only get there by actually having the ability to execute under those circumstances.
Do you know what I'd love to see this year would be, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I'd love to see Australia win the Bledisloe back.
It's been too long.
It's like 2002.
It's me, man. That's ridiculous. That's like me, man, we, man. That's way too long. It's a generation. I remember Steve Hansen jokingly saying, mate, like he saw my son, he says, mate, your son's never seen a Bledisloe Cup, has he? And he kind of joked about it. And it's like, that's not a joke anymore. He's 21. Daughter's 20 in November. It's a generation. That's 2002. It's a long time. Yeah. So
that needs to end. The one that doesn't need to end, which is my favourite record in sport at the moment, is the All Blacks haven't lost at Eden Park since 1994.
That's mad.
And the reason I love that is that Sean Fitzpatrick was the captain the day that they lost at Eden Park, which is a lot of fun every time he's on Sky with us. Fascinating. Can we do this again? I feel we've only really just scratched the surface. What we must finish with is a quick look at the weekend. Who wins and why?
Yeah, good question.
Short and sharp.
Yep. Will we start with the first one?
Yeah. We'll go game by game. So Australia, England. Who wins the series?
I'll go with my heart here. I'll go with Australia. I don't think they'll have a first half like they did. So I'll go with Australia by 3. I think it's going to be very, very tight.
You went 2-1.
England.
You went 2-1 England. Are you sticking with that?
Yeah, I think I do have a little bit worried that they have concentration lapse or whatever it is that allows them back in. But if they can build on what they did for 50 minutes of that game where they were in complete control, then I can't see Australia. I don't think they've got the physicality to outmuscle Billy. If Billy Vunipola plays like he did, if Genji plays like he did, I mean, obviously Genji, when we picked Kurtzhoff as our one, is not happy about it, and he's probably proved.
We told him it's because he was a ginger. He still didn't buy it.
Yeah, we did.
Like,
we did say it wasn't really done on anything practical, but
it's so funny because he doesn't respond to any of the positive stuff that puts up. He put out a team sheet which says Ellis is on the bench. He's like, thanks for the support.
What did he say? So like, enough said. He just went, oh, cheers, didn't make their team. Enough said. We're all like scrambling, going, no, Genji, no. Yes, we love you. It's because he was a ginger. Whatever. I was like, all right, lad.
But I think if England can bring that physicality, obviously it's going to be interesting if Marrow comes through.
He's out.
So
he's done and Underhill's done.
So obviously we need Tom Curry to come back in. I think
he's out. It'll be Jack Willis if he's fit, or Lewis Ludlam.
So we are.
I think it'll be Lewis Ludlam.
Yeah, I'm not sure
actually he's played well.
He has done really brilliant. Yeah.
England need that physicality if they can boss that like they did. Then they'll be hard to beat. But they've got to watch those lapses.
You went 2-1 because Tinds went 2-1. Are you sticking with
No,
that?
I went 2-1 because that was what I
No, you
thought.
went, yeah, what Tinds said.
Yeah, because he'd already said it, hadn't he?
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't his ideas.
You can just say me.
Yeah. No, I'm going to go. I think. I think again, this has been an interesting test, maturity-wise. I think there will be a lot to learn. I think Eddie will. The frustrating thing is to do what you did in the first half and then allow it to come back in. That is sort of the nature of professional rugby now. You see leads overturned, but I think. If it was to get the victory, this was setting that very nicely for the future because it would have been a real nice turnaround.
But it is that what George just said. This is vital for both teams in terms of how they launch their next year campaigns.
Yeah.
For England going back down to Australia, winning it because why it's so great is we're having a 3-test series, which I think is amazing. That we're actually it's on the line now.
Yeah.
You're going to find out a lot about both teams. Both teams relatively young, not a lot of There's more experience in the England team, but there's still a lot of youngsters around that as well, and they need to gel. They need to bond. It is massive. It's a massive weekend for all the Northern Hemisphere to go down there, and all 4 of them be in a place where you can go and win a Test series in the Southern Hemisphere. If they come back with 4 wins again next week, that is huge.
It's a big moment because you're taking your game away.
Yeah.
Like he's showing that brings a level of confidence to your team.
Yeah.
Physicality, but also like getting in and securing that ball. That's really important for this Wallaby team. When they do that, they can get continuity.
Yeah.
But England just beat them up on that in that second Test match. So it's a big area of improvement.
Ireland have won 4-7. Have they got one more in them?
Where's it being played?
Wellington, is it?
Is Wellington with the windy city.
I'm surprised the All Blacks haven't moved it back to Eden Park.
Yeah.
Oh, God, Wellington burned down, lads. Really sorry about that. Eden Park is.
Team manager sees setting fire to the cake tin.
Yeah. Ireland?
Ireland
Has their time come? They were very
I
good.
thought they were a chance going on to this. Or just the way they play, I said at the beginning. There's always a response from the All Blacks. They never won. They never lost 2 in a row under Steve Hansen. I think that's a thing for Ian Forsyth with these guys. So Ian Foster, rather, not Forsyth. Yeah. Ian Foster. I can honestly, and I know I'll probably get some hate mail and hate chat from all the Kiwis. I'm used to it, but I think Ireland have the game, particularly in those conditions. Windy Wellington. It's never not windy Wellington.
No.
It's not being played during the day, is it? It's being played at night.
Night game.
Yeah, so it's going to be windy. It's going to be potentially wet, 4 seasons in one day. It's sort of conditions the Irish boys will thrive in, I think.
Yeah.
It's almost like the All Blacks haven't played in that, but it's not going to be that beautiful rugby, which when they, as I said, they're really good front runners and they set the tone. But if this gets into that arm wrestle and they eliminate some of those errors, because the All Blacks can go bang, bang, bang from they can play without the ball and then hurt you. But if they can retain the ball, which we know Ireland can do, they're one of the best in the world at being able to retain the ball for long periods of time. They potentially can get it done and create history. It's been a wait for them, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But 4 out of the last 7 they've won. There's something that they do when they play the All Blacks which makes the All Blacks uncomfortable.
All Blacks are down to 4th in the world rankings. I think it's the lowest ever position. 10 seconds.
I think Ireland are prepared. I think they can execute. I think the tails are up, and now they have something to play for. And when Ireland have something to play for, they'll ruin anyone's party. And I think the great thing I heard was they all went out and had a massive night on the Saturday, so they've enjoyed their win and they'll want to do that again, and they can back it up. So I think I've had my doubts about Ireland in the past, but they're completely gone at the moment. I think they play a great, fully rounded game, and I think this New Zealand team isn't that robust mentally that it has been in the past, and I think they can get into them and cause some problems.
What Tin said?
Yeah, what's into? No, I think for me, first game, second half, Ireland's ability to play, going from their own line essentially up to New Zealand and getting a try just so easily over the game line the whole time, power, pace, great work. I think that team's got it in them. I think they can 100% do it. I think this Irish team, some southern Northern Hemisphere sides, have never done things in Southern Hemisphere countries. They've now got that monkey off their back. It's now to play for. Kind of, we said before, if you can make a god bleed, you can show that they're not mortal, or so they're not immortal. I think they've done that now on their home patch. I think it'll be very exciting. I actually think Andy Farrell, it was beautiful to watch. Eddie Jones last week, slightly prickly with the media. Andy Farrell, again, people trying to make out it was a drubbing, slightly prickly, both completely different in front of the camera. Sort of even Eddie Jones picked up going, "Oh, you're asking nice questions. You're not asking about my job. You're not asking about how the fans feel." Good, mate. Different opinion this week, mate. And Andy Farrell, the same thing. They tried to make out it was some catastrophic thing. He went, "No, I think we can react. I think we can do this." And it's great to see these blokes who sometimes appear under pressure to come back. And I think that's indicative of what this Irish team can do. The only issue is you're playing against the All Blacks, who are one of the most ruthless sides in the world. I agree with Tinds, they're not quite the finished article. But I think that's going to be the game potential of the weekend, I think, just to see two styles both wanting to play, whether it leads to some sort of mega outcome or it'll be a stalemate playing in terrible weather. You know what I mean?
If you bring the heat defensively, I know that.
Yeah.
And if he brings the heat in these big games, so that's what's going to be interesting.
And emotionally this week, someone like Andy Farrell, the way he would have coached, like Paul Gustard did it with England, it'll start afresh. They would have buried that game after the piss, and then there will be some theme this week, something that the lads will hang their hat on, that Andy Farrell will be all over. There'll be some sort of video, motivational speech, laugh, something that they'll do to really fire this team up. Like all teams sort of do it now. But gone are the days of just saying, listen, we're just playing a big game here. There'll be something they'll be hanging their hat on, something they'll be doing differently, something they'll reflect on. And by the time they build up to that final, it will be fever pitch,
South Africa 12, Wales 13 was a straight to DVD production, I think.
Yeah,
it wasn't a game for the ages. But
it's like whenever they play, it's pretty dull, isn't it? It's like the worst game that has ever been played in 2019.
In the World Cup. But
82 kicks.
I mean, they've obviously...
82,000 sleeping fans it was.
Wales can't do it again, can they?
I hope they can, but I think South Africa will... It's funny, isn't it? Anyone who's been on a group with a Safa, it's like, oh, look at our second team. We've got the depth. We've got a depth chart deeper than the deepest crevice in the ocean is. But then you go to them, deep squad, is it? Oh, second team, mate. Second team. It's like, well, go back. You've just been talking all week out. It's just rotating. Andre Pollard coming back in and all this. Look, I don't know. I think... South Africa, I don't play great rugby. I don't think they do. But they can always stay in the game and they can always win it because of physicality, set piece. Wales' job is to keep the ball in play. Don't give them penalties. Don't give them set piece focus points. If they can do that, and I think they can be in a mix. I think it'll be close again. I just think South Africa have got too much to get it done. But I hope I'm wrong.
And then Scotland too strong for Argentina. Well done the Mish, 50th cap, try to win it. Again, Scotland surely have got too much there, haven't they?
Yeah. Can we give a little shout out?
Yeah, and I'd go with the Box too. I think just for wounded, wounded Box, they'll come back and it'll become a tight fixture. They love those sort of games too. But I'll go with Scotland.
Can we give a little shout out for Japan? I know we did a bit earlier, but
Japan 15, France 20. Their second try was an absolute
cracker.
Belter.
I just think they're continuing on there. And what I was going to say is the crowd.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, you think about the amount of people that are in Japan, and if they start taking to this sport, I think it's great.
Well, it's great university. It's 60,000 people to a game.
Well, no, I think
more than the top league.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
So I think everything's looking good for the Blossoms as well.
And Georgia beating Italy. Six Nations relegation.
Real niche fixture that. I'm glad you know about that.
Well, only because everyone's now going to talk about relegation or promotion for the Six Nations.
Yeah, I'm into that.
I actually haven't seen the highlights of it. But
I'm not sure.
They deserved it.
Really?
They absolutely
deserved watching the highlights? Or?
No, I watched...
It's because, what was it, 30 points?
No, 28-19.
I thought you were very good, by the way, on the Sky. I thought you and Dylan were fantastic.
That's good. Watch that.
I thought it was good, wasn't it? Dylan was brilliant, wasn't he?
Really good deals. We'll dance again this weekend. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Really enjoyed it. And as I say, we'd love to do it again. There's so much still to talk to you about that we haven't quite gone into.
I think we get a lot if we do a live show. I think it should be guest number one. I think he'd lend himself to a very good wide audience. Obviously, he'd want a bit of cash because he's a Roosters businessman. But we get him on there. We get him, look after
and there's no under 21 stuff that's done.
That's done, mate. We've done that. Yeah, finished that. There's no need to talk about that. Well, he probably would bring it up about the naked hands there, just to make sure that the wider audience knew. He's like every time he mentions stories, like it's fine.
We need proof on that front.
Turn into the Hulk.
Good on you. Thank you very much indeed for coming. It's been a lot of fun. In case you missed it, Tinds and I have had a lot of fun over the last few weeks doing something called Rugby Players React. We had Lol, the great Lawrence Delalio on. We had Zinni with us. We've got Dan Bigger coming up as well, talking about the relative fixtures that are taking place over the course of this summer, but those matches that were played during Rugby World Cups past. You can find those episodes on our YouTube channel, where there'll be another one coming your way very soon. We're doing a live show, which we must tell you about as well, and having a barbecue by the pitch at Twickenham in September to celebrate being a year out from France 2023. The Webb Ellis Trophy will be down. You're allowed to touch it, and you're not, are you? And you are as well, actually. You're coming on for a barbecue.
Don't want to touch it.
Gloves, white
Get your
gloves.
gloves on.
Yeah, you can wear the gloves.
If you want it, you can lift it.
No, I don't want to lift it. No stolen valour around here, lads. No stolen valour. Have it, keep it. It's all right. It's not a problem.
The Webb Ellis Trophy will be down as well. You can come and get a picture with that, or with any of the team who are going to be on the day, if you so desire. If you'd like further details, go to twickenhamstadium.com/goodbadrugby, and the date, the most important bit, is the 8th of September. So grab a ticket and come and have along for a barbecue by the pitch at Twickenham. We'd love to see you there. And good Scads and Rugby this week. End of season awards?
Yeah, we had a little wrap up of the season, look back of best shows, dished out some awards, best on pitch. We finished off talking about trying to figure out what Scaz is going to do on their TikTok, because they are in World Cup camp from now.
Oh, wow.
Till October.
Wow.
June till October. She started this week, I think.
Are you
Or last
serious?
week.
My God. I mean, either
luck.
they'll all be broken and in pieces and unable to run by the end of it, or they'll be next level.
Well, let's hope it's the
Just talking
latter.
about World Cup stage, we missed the joke going. So, your first World Cup was when? Was
95.
95.
South Africa.
Yeah,
South Africa.
Yeah, South Africa won it, and then 99 you won it.
Yep.
And then 2003 got to the final.
Yes.
And lost, right?
2007.
2007.
Yeah, quarterfinal, right? Tins. What World Cups did you do?
99.
Yeah.
Work
But
experience
didn't play,
tonight.
work
Yeah.
experience. 3, won
Won it.
I broke my leg in 7, so I
Two-
wasn't there.
yeah.
11, stag do.
Yeah.
Great.
So my World Cup is 2011, named the worst touring side ever. Knocked out in the quarterfinals. 2015 didn't get the pool stages. I mean, why the fuck am I even at this table with these people? Like, what was the point of having me in here? What's your World Cup experience? Shit, and then super shit.
Yeah, question we've
And
been
actually,
asking
and the first
for
one
many
cost
a
me
show.
150 grand in legal fees to defend me against this mental maid that I did nothing to. I mean, honestly, I was the only person that cost me money to go to the World Cup. Should have stayed at home and not
Similar
bothered.
record with podcast.
I've got a similar record, yeah.
I think it cost me money to go to that World Cup.
But yeah, it did, yeah. And then they tried to fire me in 2007 because I got all the lads Musto jackets. I tweeted about it, and they went mad. Rob Andrew going, "Oh, we're going to fine you for that." And then the best thing is he called me into his office and held up a newspaper and went, "Right, how do we get from a nice England team to this?" It was like England shame. I was like, "I don't know, Rob. Bad management, poor execution." And else. They went, oh, that's not the answer I expected. Well, that's the fucking answer I'm going to say to the press. You try and fire me. Oh, well, you know,
Let's talk it through.
let's talk this. James Hask on a suspended fine. You're welcome. See you later.
And on that bombshell, we have been the good, the bad, and the rugby. We'll hopefully see you next week. God knows. You're in control next week.
I am. I'm the Alex Payne. I'll put my very best blazer on, my tightest little pair of school pants,
Side-parting.
pair of brogues. Hello, Alex Payne.
God bless you all.
Leather
the show
satchel.
is
Leather
produced
satchel.
by Sam the Man. The Good, the Bad, and the Rugby is a folding pocket production. Have a very good rest of your week. Bye for now.